I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020.
Well, I won't step down. No, I won't step down. Even though I'm told by everyone around, still I won't step down. Now my polls are down, can't be turned around. And I need a nap, so I have to lie down. Gonna hang around, and I won't step down. I won't step down, Jack. I ain't going nowhere. I won't step down, Jill. There's no need to frown, 'cause I won't step down. Well, the race is tied, so I'll have to fight. And I don't know why I keep Kamala around. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't step down. I won't step down, Jack. I don't need elderly care. I won't step down, Jill. I won't step down. I won't step down, babies. I wanna sniff your hair. I won't step down. I might fall down, but I won't step down. No, I won't step down.
I learned long ago, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
I don't elderly care. I won't step down, Jill. I won't step down. I won't step down, babies. I wanna sniff your hair. I won't step down. I might fall down, but I won't step down. No, I won't step down.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ministry. Hey, Carmen, good to see you. Welcome back to another episode of the Ministry of Truth. I am the only host on this show because only one person can host this fucking show, and it's me. And that's only because it's my show. What's up, Don? So we're waiting for this FBI question of Director Ray about what happened last week, not last Saturday, but whatever that shit happened. So gonna be a lot of either answering questions or a lot of I can't answer that right now, it's an open investigation. But until then, let's get back to the music.
A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Turn on TV, a strange lady laughing uncontrollably. Number 2, Pennsylvania Avenue. No
understood what was possible, unburdened by what has been.
We have the ability to see what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Here's the thing. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus?
What up, Dub?
Right? Can you raise your hand if you
How you
love
doing,
a
brother?
yellow school bus, right? Just, there's something about...
Yeah, Kamala's running a little bit hot tonight. She knows she just hobbied away from Commander in Chief, you know what I'm saying? Watch her reach down, side of hers.
Oh, fuck you, YouTube. That was fun. That was good. That's fun. Now, we're just waiting on this fucking committee here, and it was supposed to start. Wow. Start 3 minutes ago. So let me replace my screen. Oh, that's not even the right one. I got too many windows open, guys. Kamala! All right, we should be good now. It's not even... whatever. So, oh. Yeah, see? Y'all thought I was bullshitting. We're waiting for this shit to start. Oh. Kamala! Kamala! How's everyone doing today? There's 3 of us. I know who 2 of them are, and there's 1 lurker. Now, one can guess who that lurker is. Somebody that never comments, or somebody that's secretly watching because they want to see what I'm going to say, and they know I don't like them. That's okay. It's okay. There she is. Told ya. Wait, there's a 4th one. And Donovan. Good morning, family. So what we're watching today, in case you didn't know, FBI Director Christopher Wray will be testifying in front of Congress on what he had...
Committee will come, excuse me, the committee will come to order without
It's
objection.
Jordan's committee.
The chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing on oversight of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, what's up, little dude? The new cat was pledging the allegiance with me. Bat Mom, good to see you, love.
Today's
I
hearing
say
by,
love, so we have this relationship that...
Recognizing the fact that we no longer have one of our great members with us, Sheila Jackson Lee, as we all know, passed away. She was a dedicated public servant. Her service on this committee,
I didn't say it was you, Dip.
excuse me, spanned nearly 3 decades and included shepherding through countless pieces of legislation. I said yesterday at the hearing that I don't know that there was any member.
At least we got something replacing the oxygen. Oh, that's so wrong.
Jackson Lee did. And she was just a pleasant spirit who we all enjoyed. And we're thinking about her family. We all certainly will miss Sheila. I yield to the ranking member for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this room in our hearts
Oh, fuck
feel a
me.
little emptier today as we mourn the loss of our dear friend and colleague, Sheila Jackson Lee. In the nearly 30 years that I served with Sheila on the Judiciary Committee, I witnessed her boundless energy, her courage, and her character as she lent her voice and her legislative talents.
Shut up. Anyway, like I was saying, this is going to be the Director Wray of the FBI trying to lie and bullshit his way through another hearing about how inept his organization is. Just like every other 3-letter organization so far, it's so fucking stupid. I don't get any ads. I have,
In a bipartisan
I pay for premium because I don't like having shows where I have to click through the ads. That's why you guys notice there's never an ad when I run videos.
and racial justice. Sheila engaged in many spirited debates, but she always had the deepest respect for all of her colleagues, even
Did
those
she,
with
though?
whom she vehemently disagreed. And she deeply
Remember,
loved the
Sheila
institution of
Jackson Lee
Congress.
had Alex drug out of her rally.
If Sheila took up
Well, maybe that's it too, because
she could
I
be
have ad
relentless in
blockers
an
on as
extra
well.
phone call, going to one more meeting, offering one more amendment, or making one more speech. She would not rest until she thought she had done everything she could to fight for the issues she cared about. Through it all, she stayed
Dude, you
true to
couldn't
her
get a
values
tighter knot
and
than
always
that.
had the people of Houston close to her heart. We are all better for having known her.
Yes,
The
yes.
American people are better for having
Hillary
had her in their
Clinton
corner
too.
all these years. I will deeply miss my friend and colleague. May her memory be a blessing. I yield back.
I want to thank the ranking member. Well said. Now, Chairman recognizes himself for an opening statement. July 13th was a terrible day for America. We all agree spirited debate, fighting for what you believe in, are part of what makes this country the greatest nation in the world. But the First Amendment and robust political debate are not consistent in any way with violence. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a tragedy that took the life of a good man, Corey Compertor, leaving a wife without a husband and 2 daughters without a father. Others were injured, and of course, former President Trump, by the grace of God, survived the assassination attempt. There are a lot of unanswered questions about the security failures that day, questions about decisions made before the rally, questions about actions during the rally, and questions about statements made after the event concluded. Prior to the rally, why was the president's security detail denied requests for extra resources? Why weren't all the buildings secured?
Same reason
For a
fucking
finite number of
Pelosi
buildings that
is.
needed to be secured, why wasn't that done?
And
Why
Schiff,
was the president allowed to walk
Schumer.
out on the stage when there was a suspicious person on the property? During the rally, what exactly happened between 6:09 and 6:14, those critical 5 minutes? We know from briefings from the director and the deputy director at the FBI and other information we've gathered that at 6:09, the shooter was identified on the roof. At 6:10, the counter sniper was notified. Counter sniper teams were notified about the shooter. 6:11, the shooter fired several shots, injuring and killing one person, injuring others. At 6:12, the counter sniper took down the shooter, and at 6:14, President Trump was escorted off the stage by Secret
Took
Service
2
agents.
shots from the snipers.
We need
kill
to
him.
know what happened play by play, moment by moment, second by second, the communications that took place, again, during that critical 5 minutes. And then finally, after the
Be
rally,
quiet, bad mom. Is it,
why
how
did
do you
both
say
the
it?
Secret
El
Service
Rufo?
and Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas lie to the American people? July 14th, the day after the attack, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said this, quote, "The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false." The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, "That is an unequivocally false assertion.
that's
We had not
cute. That's
received
my
any
love
requests for
language.
additional security measures that were rebuffed." But 5 days later, top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel. And on the 21st of July, the New York Times, confirming what the Washington Post reported, said, quote, "Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail." 180-degree change. Why did they initially lie to us in the days after the attack in Pennsylvania? Finally, we hope to learn more today from Director Wray about the shooter.
Is he going to step
The
down
use of
too?
The drone, the explosives
Hope
that were
they
in his
grill
car,
him the
how he
same
got on
way.
the roof, and a host
But
of other
Nadler's
questions.
out there, so he's
It is our
going to be.
hope that Director Wray's
shot
testimony
tag.
can begin to give answers to the American people about all of these questions and concerns. So, Director, we appreciate you being here.
Shit.
And we trust that you're going to be as transparent with the committee and the country as you possibly can. And I'm sure you understand that a significant portion of the country has a healthy skepticism regarding the FBI's ability to conduct a fair, honest, open, and transparent investigation. And that skepticism is based on what they've witnessed over the past several years. The American people have seen a Biden-Harris Justice Department that can't tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, that can't tell us who leaked the Dobbs opinion, and that can't tell us who put cocaine at the White House. A Biden-Harris
me.
Justice Department who raided President Trump's home, Biden-Harris Justice Department who worked with social media companies to censor Americans, Biden-Harris Justice Department who let the country believe that the Hunter Biden laptop was misinformation when they knew at the time it was authentic, and maybe
What's
most
up, dude?
importantly, a Biden-Harris Justice Department who retaliated against whistleblowers who came to this committee and spoke to us about these issues. Last week, we sent you 12 questions about what occurred on July 13th. We expect you to answer those questions and the others that I've just outlined. And again, we thank you for being here today and appreciate your willingness to answer the questions that the committee is going to have. And with that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 2 weeks ago, our country witnessed a
Forgot to give
shocking
cats their
assassination
morning treat.
attempt on a presidential candidate. Now, I disagree with Donald Trump in almost every policy area imaginable.
Yeah, we know, Ralph.
I am frequently shocked and outraged at the plans he has for our
Ralph?
country and the words that come out of his mouth. And I have dedicated much of the last 8 years
Jerry,
to fighting
Jerry.
his agenda.
He looks like a
Regardless
Ralph.
of my strong feelings about Donald Trump's behavior, I unequivocally and unabashedly condemn with every fiber of my being the attempt against his life. This was not just an attack on a man, but an attack on our democracy. Political violence erodes the very foundations of our nation. The concepts of freedom of speech, of peaceful transitions of power, of a democratic government at its core, these cannot exist if political violence is allowed to fester and to go unchecked. And if you think that this one assassin's bullet was a bolt out of the blue and not part of a wave of violence that has threatened this nation for years, then you have missed the point of what my Democratic colleagues and I have been imploring you to hear for some time. Election workers,
I
many of them
remember,
working for
Donovan.
free, face near
You know who else
constant threats of
remembers?
violence.
Pepperidge Farm.
One recent instance, an
do.
Indiana man pleaded guilty to threatening to kill an election worker who said that there were no irregularities in a recent election. That man said, quote, 10 million plus patriots will surround you when you least expect it and will, expletive, kill you, close quote. That is political violence. In another instance, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi's husband was bludgeoned over the head with a hammer by an intruder in his home who had been there to capture Ms. Pelosi, interrogate her, and possibly, quote, break her kneecaps because of her liberal views. That is political violence. The death
No, I
threat
think that
surging
was
against Vice
sexual
President
frustration.
Harris, former President Obama and his wife Michelle, and Governor DeSantis, as well as many others, including videos online of individuals holding guns making assassination threats. That is political violence. The plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer and overthrow parts of the state government.
Hey,
That is
Director Ray had a
political
part in that.
violence. The
That was
brutal,
his
deadly attack
ordeal.
3 years ago against this very building.
Mention that.
Rioters breaking through police barriers to run through these halls chanting, "Kill Nancy," and "Hang Mike Pence," and even hanging a noose outside the building.
Don't forget Chaz.
These rioters battering Capitol Police officers and forcing members of Congress and their staffs to go into hiding, squatted in spaces under desks or in
The Summer of
closets.
Love. Did we forget about
That
those
is
riots?
political
Never.
violence. This assassination attempt, as horrific as it is, should surprise no one. And you would think a political party that almost lost their presidential candidate through an act of political violence would have something to say about the way their leaders keep talking about the next election. Donald Trump has
They
warned there will be a,
did.
quote, bloodbath if he loses. Republican Ohio State Senator George Lang said just last week at a rally for J.D. Vance that he is, quote, afraid that civil war might be necessary if Republicans lose the November election. President of the right-wing think tank and Project 2025 leader, the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, said on Stephen Bannon's podcast, quote, "We are in the process of the second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be," close quote.
Makes sense.
Republican former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin said in August of last year of Trump's indictments, "Do you want us to be in civil war? Because that's what's going to happen. We're not going to keep putting up with this. We do need to rise up and take our country back."
Imagine if we did.
I could go on.
We
but
haven't
it's
done it
more
yet.
and more of the same. And I hear nothing from the other side of the aisle in this room about these statements. Do you support a bloodbath if you don't get the
Eloy,
election
brother.
outcome you want? Do you justify violence if the left does not agree with you? And what exactly has preoccupied this Republican majority while their allies threaten violence to their political enemies, real and imagined? We have chased down baseless conspiracy theories designed solely to influence the 2024 election in favor of
Russian
Donald
collusion?
Trump. We have spent millions of
Hunter
dollars,
Biden laptop?
thousands of hours of staff time, and more than 100 transcribed interviews, chasing false accusations against President Biden, supporting an impeachment effort that seemed designed to fail, and hunting for a smoking gun that simply does not exist. And instead of admitting that these investigations found no corruption, coercion, or unethical behavior by the Biden administration, Republicans chose to just dig deeper.
Absolutely nothing, Zippy. You know it's a
Imagine what
grandstand.
could have happened if we had spent these thousands of hours of staff time and those millions of taxpayer dollars addressing even one aspect.
Right?
of
Imagine if we
political
weren't sending that
violence
money to
that now
Ukraine to those
threatens our
fucking
country.
Jews.
Perhaps had this Republican majority lifted a finger to help a nation that is awash
That's
in
billions of
guns,
dollars we could have
the
used.
assassin in
Fucking
Butler would
bitch.
not have had such easy access to the weapon he used to fire on that crowd. Director Wray,
Hey,
your
how
agency
hard
is
was it for me to
responsible
get you
for
guys?
addressing some of the most
Oh
serious
shit, I had a
issues
secret
of
clearance
our
when I got
time.
those. Never mind.
The Bureau fights gun violence, which claims the lives of 40,000 Americans every year. It protects election security from growing threats from malign foreign actors who are working tirelessly to influence our elections. It protects against domestic terrorists and violent extremists who have been a growing threat in recent years and have carried out horrific mass shootings and deadly events around the country. And so much more.
How many of those were
I
trained?
apologize to you, Director, that instead of supporting you in these missions in the 118th Congress, some of my colleagues have instead hindered your work, maligned your agents, and called to abolish and defund your agency.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
All for political gain. It is despicable, especially from the party that claims to, quote, back the blue. And I know that you and your many agents and employees have paid the price for these baseless attacks. I know you have faced a barrage of threats, distrust, and vitriol from the public as a result of these wild, politically
Well,
driven conspiracies.
we're allowed to.
I know it has become even more
Called the
dangerous and
First
difficult
Amendment,
for you to come to work
Jerry.
each day. I may not agree with you on everything, but I sincerely thank you and every employee in your agency who continues to protect our country.
By
The FBI
attacking
is vital to keeping
law-abiding
America safe,
citizens.
and I pray that today we can focus on the real, substantive work of the agency. It is the least we owe our country
Which is?
in these times. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Christopher Wray has been the director of the FBI since 2017. He previously served as the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal
what's
Division
up,
of the
girl?
Department of Justice, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, and Associate Deputy Attorney General, and as Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. Again, Director Wray, you've been here many times. We appreciate you being here today, and look forward to your testimony and answering our questions. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God?
You
The record
lying sack of
affirm,
shit.
the-
He doesn't
let
believe
the
in
record
God, so
reflect
it's
that the
okay.
witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and please be seated. We have votes coming in about 10 minutes, but we definitely want to get through your opening statement as far as we can, and this is going to be an interesting day on Capitol Hill with the Prime Minister of Israel here as well. So, Director Wray, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, members of the committee. I want to begin by offering my condolences on the passing of Representative Jackson Lee, who served the people of Texas in this body and on this committee for so long. Thank you all for your support of our efforts to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. I am proud to be here today representing the 38,000 special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff who make up the FBI.
That's a lot of
men and
motherfucking
women
people.
who every day work relentlessly to counter the most complex threat environment I've seen in my tenure as FBI director, maybe in my entire career in law enforcement. Before I go any further, I also want to acknowledge and offer my deepest condolences to the victims of the horrific assassination attempt in Butler County. To the friends and family of Corey Comparator, who by all accounts lost his life protecting others from danger. To the other victims, two of whom were critically wounded. And of course, to President Trump, former President Trump and his family.
No, President Trump.
As I've said from the beginning, the attempted assassination of the former president was an attack on our democracy.
It was
our
fucking
democratic
planned by you
We
guys.
will not and do not tolerate political violence of any kind, especially a
Tell us when you
despicable
met
account
Crooks.
of this magnitude. And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the
Are you
bottom
serious?
of what happened. We are bringing all the
Can't use fucking
resources of the
Smash, oh my-
FBI to bear, both criminal and national security. Now, there's a whole lot of work underway and still a lot of work to do, and our understanding of what happened
YouTube's being
and
a
why
bitch.
will continue to evolve, but we're going to leave no stone unturned. The shooter may be deceased, but the FBI's
What about the other one?
investigation is very much ongoing. To that point, I also want to acknowledge that I recognize both the congressional and the public interest in this case and the importance of this investigation to the American people. And I understand there are a lot of open questions. So while the investigation is very much ongoing and our assessments of the shooter and his actions continue to evolve, my hope here today is to do my best to provide you with all the information I can, given where we are at this point. I have been saying for some time now that we are living in an elevated threat environment. And tragically, the Butler County assassination attempt is another example, a particularly heinous and very public one, of what I've been talking about. But it also reinforces our need at the FBI and our ongoing commitment to stay focused on the threats, on the mission, and on the people we do the work with and the people we do the work for. Every day, all across this country and indeed around the world, the men and women of the FBI are doing just that, working around the clock to counter the threats we face. Just in the last year, for example, in California,
you know what?
the
We need a code
FBI
word.
and our partners targeted an organized crime syndicate responsible for trafficking fentanyl,
Just some
meth,
random word
cocaine all across North
that we can
America.
remember.
We charged the Mexican-based suppliers who brought the drugs into the United States, a network of Canada-based truck drivers who delivered the drugs, and the distributors in the United States who spread the poison into our communities. Staying on threats emanating from the border, I have warned for some time now about the threat that foreign terrorists may seek to exploit our southwest border or some other port of entry to advance a plot against Americans. Just last month, for instance, the Bureau and our Joint Terrorism Task Forces worked with ICE in multiple cities across the country as several individuals with suspected international terrorist ties were arrested using ICE's immigration authorities. Leading up to those arrests, hundreds of FBI employees dedicated countless hours to understand the threat and identify additional individuals of concern. Now, the physical security of the border is, of course, not in the FBI's lane, but as the threat has escalated, we're working with our partners in law enforcement and the intelligence community to find and stop foreign terrorists who would harm Americans and our interests. As concerning as the known or suspected terrorists encountered at the border are, perhaps even more concerning are those we do not yet know about because they provided fake documents or because we didn't have information connecting them to terrorism at the time.
But you
they
still let
arrived in
random
the United
people come
States.
across the border. Okay.
Staying
That's how that
ahead
works.
of today's threats demands that we work together. And for the FBI, that means doubling down on our partnerships, especially with state and local law enforcement. Whether it's working through our hundreds of joint terrorism task forces, to build out source networks, to identify those who slip through the cracks, or targeting the worst of the worst responsible for the violence that still plagues far too many communities through our Safe Streets task forces, or taking the fight to the cartels responsible for trafficking the dangerous drugs like fentanyl, pouring into our country and claiming countless American lives. Staying ahead of the threat also means continuing to disrupt the cyber criminals ravaging businesses, large and small, and confronting nation states like China, targeting our innovation and our critical infrastructure. At the Bureau, we're proud to work side by side with our brothers and sisters in federal, state, and local law enforcement, our partners in the intelligence community, and others around the world to fulfill our commitment to keep Americans safe. Now, on Friday, the FBI will celebrate its 116th anniversary. 116 years of protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution. 116 years of working with our
I don't get it,
partners
Donovan.
to safeguard the communities we serve. 116 years of innovating to stay ahead of the complex, evolving, and very real threats out there. I am proud of the legacy the men and women of the FBI have built and all they have accomplished for the American people. So, if I may, as we approach this week's anniversary, I would just like to say to all those who are part of the FBI family, from our current employees to our formers and to our partners across law enforcement and the intelligence community, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for dedicating your lives to this country and to its people. It is both humbling and an honor to serve alongside you, and I look forward to the work we're going to continue to do together. And with that, thank you again for having me, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Director Wray. Excuse me. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, I'm way down here. I appreciate the chairman.
Yeah, where are you?
Because I've got to leave. But let me ask this question.
Where the fuck
Why
are you?
doesn't the FBI disclose to the American people all of the investigative detail and evidence that you are gathering as it is gathered?
Well, we have tried to be transparent with both Congress and the American people as we're going along in the investigation, frankly, unusually so for an ongoing investigation, given the sheer nature of it. We have provided a lot of information. I expect to continue to provide information. I expect to be able to provide some additional information here today in response to your questions and your colleagues. But part of the issue is that, as like in any investigation, as we proceed, facts evolve. Our understanding of what somebody said turns out to have more context that we didn't have before. We have additional leads out there. So part of our goal is not just to respect the ongoing investigation process, but also to make sure that we don't prematurely provide information that then 2 days later turns out to be different than what we told people, because that's very much, kind of a natural part of any investigation.
So, did Crooks fire 8 shots?
We have recovered 8 cartridges on the roof.
Why was Crooks allowed to get off 8 shots?
Well, that, I think, is something we're still digging into. Again, maybe this is a good place for me to make clear.
I think you had a
the
modified
different
trigger on it,
investigations that
too.
are going on. So, because certainly I understand
Well, and given that I've only got 3 minutes left, and I know other members, I'm really interested because I appreciate your invitation. You said you're prepared to disclose things as questions are asked. So I don't want to waste time, I just want to get to the questions that might, and as many members as can, ask questions that you'll answer. I actually think I'd be glad for you to go on soliloquy, frankly, and tell us what you know. I think the American people want to know.
We all do.
Why was President Trump not kept off the stage?
We don't know the answer to that, but I want to be clear, and this is important because I think it goes to questions that I can and cannot answer. Our investigation, the FBI's mandate, is focused on the shooter and all things related to his attack. Now, obviously, I understand very much the intense interest and focus on the Secret Service's performance, actions, decision-making, et cetera. There are 2 separate after-action reviews, the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been convened that are focused on that. Now, our investigation will obviously overlap with that.
Here's the problem. We're out 13 days, and you say we've been disclosing. We had the director, or the colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police in front of Homeland yesterday. He was quite candid. He disclosed to us that Butler Emergency Services Unit personnel were posted into the windows on the 2nd floor of the AGR building, that they left there to go pursue the person that they spotted, Crooks, that they texted a photo of Crooks to the PSP representative in the command center. That information was relayed to the United States Secret Service. They asked that it be texted to someone else. That was many minutes before President Trump took the stand. What we don't know is why were they not keeping him off the stand? And to the extent, I know we always hear when there's a criminal investigation, you got to wait for that to develop. But do you have any reason do you have any other target of your criminal investigation other than Crooks? Who's dead?
That's a good question.
We are investigating the shooter both to determine his motive and his preparations and
kinda hard to
activities
figure
before
that
the
out, though.
shooting, but also to make sure whether or not there are any co-conspirators, accomplices.
At this
et cetera.
point, have
And then he
you
was
developed any
transactive.
evidence to so suggest that there are any accomplices or cooperators or assisters?
Not at this time, but again,
Okay.
the investigation's ongoing.
So here's the thing. While we wait, maybe for months, and I hate to say this, I'm not trying to take a pot shot, but the country went for years with the understanding that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation
Get 'em.
offered by respected former intel officials. And the whole time the FBI had the laptop and then let that happen in public until finally offering testimony in a case. To the degree we wait to hear as a country and as a Congress what has happened in this event, because the FBI is conducting an investigation, it provides quarter for the U.S. Secret Service not perhaps to reckon with the problems that are obvious to everyone. So let's get a couple in while I've got 13 more seconds. One more question perhaps. Senator Grassley says that the records of the day show that there was a counter unmanned aerial surveillance operator on site. Was there?
Wait.
And why did that person not prevent crooks from being able to use a drone?
So again, questions about the Secret Service's performance are better directed to those other reviews. What I can tell you when it comes to drones is that Crooks himself had a drone, and I'm prepared to answer questions here today about the shooter and his use of the drone, for example.
I want to know more about him and what he can do to fix
Gentleman
it,
yields back to ranking members recognized for 5
and
minutes.
why you're so fucking corrupt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening statement, political violence is a scourge and entirely unacceptable, no matter the source or the target. Last October, a far-right conspiracy theorist broke into Nancy Pelosi's home
Oh,
and
my
bludgeoned her
God.
husband. Prominent Republicans mocked the attack and promoted conspiracy theories about it.
What about
Last
Steve Scalise
August, an
getting
armed
shot?
Utah man who threatened to kill President Biden was killed as FBI agents attempted to serve a warrant on him hours before President Biden landed in his state. Some on the right claimed that the man was simply a, quote, Second Amendment enthusiast. In recent weeks and months, those on the right have repeatedly called for, quote, civil war, with an Ohio state senator saying that if Republicans lose the election, quote, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved. The president of the Heritage Foundation likewise said that, quote, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows
And no
it
one
to
likes
be.
the Heritage Foundation except for
Director
liberals.
Ray, it's obviously important that we respect First Amendment protections, but there is clearly a point at which some violent rhetoric crosses over into threats of violence or leads to actual violence. Could you describe how the FBI looks at this relationship between rhetoric and action and what you are seeing around the country?
So I appreciate the question, and this is an issue that I've been talking about for some time. In our view, there is a right way and a wrong way under the First Amendment to express your views, no matter how passionate or even angry you are. And violence and threats of violence is not the right way. And we don't care what you're upset about or who you're upset with. When, from the FBI's perspective, when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that's when we have to draw the line. That's when we get engaged. And there is an alarming phenomenon that we've seen over the last several years of that kind of passion and heated rhetoric turning into actual violence and threats of violence. We've seen it against public officials of all sorts.
I'll put it on mute.
We've seen it against law enforcement. The number of officers shot and killed in the line of duty in this country is, frankly, outrageous and alarming. And I know that because every time an officer is shot and killed anywhere in this country, since the day I started as FBI director, I personally call the chief or the sheriff to express my condolences.
Do you?
And to talk to them about the victim's family. And the number of those shootings that are ambush related,
Oh,
meaning
shit,
somebody
you're right.
targeting law enforcement because they're law enforcement, is particularly alarming. I have made around 400 of those
$1,000?
phone calls.
Oh.
It's almost every 5 days that a law enforcement officer is killed in the line of duty. And that is an example of the kind of ways in which passions and heated rhetoric can bubble over into violence.
Thank you. Members of Congress, their families, and their staffs have witnessed an alarming rise in threats against them. I appreciate the work your agency has done to investigate and address these threats, but I'm concerned that we do not seem to be stemming the tide. What is the FBI doing to ensure that members of Congress, their families, and their staffs are safe?
So we have a very close relationship with the Capitol Police, and we have members of the
That doesn't
Capitol
count,
Police, for
Donovan. We know
example,
that.
who are on some of our task forces. We share intelligence information about things that we're seeing, trends that we're seeing with Capitol Police and others in law enforcement. Obviously, if we have specific information about an effort to target a member of Congress, then we're
Are you serious,
Capitol
Mark?
Police in a much more specific way. But those are some of the
That's
things.
really
Thank you.
strange.
Now, Director, your office is leading the investigation into the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Republicans in Congress, including members of this committee, have repeatedly called for defunding the FBI. What impact would defunding or even just limiting your funding have on the FBI's ability to conduct this?
Well, the
and other
FBI hasn't
investigations?
fucking solved anything, you stupid
So
bitch.
I understand that there are heated views, opinions about us, just like there are about every institution in today's America. But cutting our funding is incredibly short-sighted, and the people it really hurts are state and local law enforcement and the American people we're all sworn to protect.
Thank you. During my remaining time, I want to turn to a different matter. In recent days, Republican members of Congress have attacked presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris as a, quote, DEI candidate, which presumably is code for women and person of color. It's not a new theme for them. In May, Chairman Jordan wrote to you claiming that because of DEI initiatives, the FBI is no longer hiring, quote,
Well, Harris
the
got where
brightest
she is today
candidates
because of her
to fill
fucking
the
mouth.
position of special agent. With my remaining time,
Willie Brown will tell
Director,
you.
can you please answer the following questions? Is it true that hiring women and people of color means that FBI is no longer hiring the best and the brightest to serve as law enforcement officers? Is there any evidence that women and people of color are less effective in law enforcement roles? And what message does it send to prospective applicants when their leaders demean them and make judgments about them based solely on their race or gender?
Witness may respond.
So any notion that we have lowered our standards, our hiring standards, is just not accurate. In fact, our standards are as competitive and selective as ever. We have tens of thousands of people applying, and our selection rate is about 3.1%, which is more selective than just about any university in the country. And most of our applicants, I think something like 50%
Still
of them
more
are coming from
selective
military
being-
or law enforcement backgrounds. About 50% of them also have advanced degrees. The average age is around 31, which means they're bringing a wealth of personal and professional experience when they arrive. And to suggest that those people, because of efforts related to diversity or anything like that, are less qualified, frankly, is not at all consistent with what I see, having visited all of our field offices and seen these young people in action, and I think is an insult to those hardworking men and women who've signed up to dedicate their lives for this country.
Thank you, Director. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Director, let me go back to where Mr. Bishop was. Tell me about the drone. You act like you
There
wanted
we
to
go.
fill us in on that. Fill us in.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter
Fox of all
appears to
places.
have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation
was it
has
placed there?
uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the
That's what
day
I'm
of the
getting
shot?
to. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area
2
for
hours
about
be-
11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away
Okay.
from that. We think, but we do not know.
Yeah,
So
you
again,
don't
this is
know.
one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the
Yeah,
route.
about 200 yards away, yes.
200 yards. Okay, that's important information. What about the bombs that we've heard about in the shooter's car?
So again, the FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices.
Yep.
There were, we've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call sophisticated operations, or this?
I think,
I don't know. That's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
yeah, I think it's we've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have
IEDs.
the ability to be detonated remotely. And so to that point, in addition to the two devices that we recovered out of his vehicle, there were receivers for those two explosive devices with the devices. And then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times. At a moment, it looks like because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous.
And I'm sure we're going to get into all these subjects a little bit later as
So
well.
was it really bombs in the car
Tell us what
then?
you can about the encrypted platforms we've heard about.
So one of the things that we're drilling into hard with the shooter in an effort to try to learn more about his state of mind, his motive, his ideology, his context, everything else, is to look at all of his devices, any social media accounts he had, et cetera. And one of the things we've learned in finally getting into his phone, which was also a significant technical challenge from an encryption perspective, but in addition, once we got on the phone, it turned out he was using some encrypted messaging application.
And again, the same question relative to the bombs. Was this pretty sophisticated, or is this is the kind of the norm you see with folks like, similar situation? How would you describe it?
On this subject, I would say this has unfortunately now become very commonplace, and it's a real challenge for not just the FBI, but state and local law enforcement all over the state.
Tell me exactly the scope of, does the scope of your investigation include what I call that critical 5 minutes from when the 6:09, when this is based, I think, on the information you've given to Congress, 6:09 when the shooter's identified on the roof, and 6:14 when President Trump is ultimately escorted off, and all that happens, the shots that take place in between there. Do you have access to the communications that were going on at the time in that critical 5 minutes?
So our investigation, when you say scope, our investigation includes that time frame, although focused again on the shooter himself and his attack.
Now, shooter's involved in that. He's obviously involved in that time frame.
Correct, and as part of that, as part of our focus, our investigation of the shooter and the attack, of course, we are interviewing law enforcement from the scene because those are some of the most significant witnesses, and we're obviously getting access to their materials.
What about
and
eyewitnesses?
that kind of thing, and the Secret
You're
Service
getting
has been
access
fully
to
cooperative.
You have access to the communications that exist there.
That exact question, as I sit here at the moment, I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I know that Secret Service has been cooperative with us.
The Congress would like access to those communications as well. I mean, not just that 5 minutes, although I think that's the critical time frame. There's lots of communications we'd love to have access as well. I see my time is up, and they have called votes on the floor. I think there are about 6 minutes left in votes, so the committee will stand in recess until approximately 10 minutes after votes conclude on the House floor.
Oh, recess. You heard that? Yeah. The man fart. How's everyone doing? All 8 of us. LARP, good to see you. I'm looking on the wrong screen. Glad you could join us. I can't believe Fox News is actually fucking censoring his face. That is the weirdest thing because you'd think they all about showing his face. What about the other networks? Anybody check? Because this is straight from the committee. Live. Benny Johnson's doing it too. Okay, his is showing Ray. AP. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Daily decoded. Oh, he's doing the wrong one. Scumbag. Here we go. Let's see Fox. What the fuck? That is weird, LARP. That is crazy. Why don't they have that camera access? Let's see. News Nation. Oh, they're using the same website as me. So, of course, they're going to show his face. That's strange. You'd think, Fair and Balanced would have the whole fucking news segment or the whole picture like mine. I could turn off my camera and just be like, "Oh shit, wrong way." But then you can't hear me talk. Very odd. Very, very odd. Let's see. Which one did I play? I don't remember. Fuck it. Let's continue. Oh, did he keep it up? He sure did. Yeah, so Vic left a huge docs video up from this morning. Great. Don't check it out or check it out. I don't recommend it. Or I do recommend it. I don't care. Do what you want. I was bored. I was waiting for my VA appointment to start. And then, naturally, I wanted to listen to something where I didn't have to pay attention to. But it was doxing like a motherfucker. Let's see what... Oh! White House press brief at 1. Don't really care about that. Kamala Harris briefing at 11:45. Don't really care about that. Director Ray. Creepy. Ooh. Oh, yeah, it didn't dox me. I don't think it did. Yeah, doxing is getting real, real dumb. But you know what? People are going to do what they want to do. For right now, I'm going to dedicate a song. Fuck. Why can't I remember his name? Oh, because it's Tyson. I'm going to dedicate this song to the not really late or great individual. I'm going to play it, and you guys can figure out who you think this applies to. Because I know who I'm thinking about. As soon as you hear this song, you'll see why.
A lot of people, when they hear the term pedophile, they automatically assume that it means a sex offender. And that isn't true, and it leads to a lot of misconceptions about attractions toward minors.
Oh man, y'all are pedophiles. For a little bit of money, you will sell a child. Ain't the LGBTQ a bunch of pedophiles? You just see a dollar sign cause y'all are pedophiles. Y'all are sick, hey, y'all a bunch of pedophiles. For a little bit of money, you will sell a child. Ain't the LGBTQ a bunch of pedophiles? You just see a dollar sign cause y'all are pedophiles. Y'all are sick, pedophiles. Y'all should be ashamed. Throw them in the fire with the flames. Line them up and let us take aim. How did we get to this place? When grooming kids is something you embrace. I got a gun and it goes something like the bass. It's a crime now and it's time out for these men dressing in drag. Pull a 9 out, time to sign now. You gon' buy now with that flag. I say no to that rainbow, it's no bueno, you're fake. No halo, got the queso cause you do it all for the pay. They ain't hiding now, they coming for the kids. They calling me a bigot, but y'all a bundle of twigs. You selling off the children, going to the highest bid. How much you getting paid from the rhinos and all the libs? Y'all might be handed over, I ain't wasting time in prayer. You send your kids to hell, you sick and you don't even care. Maybe we should stone you, get you in the city square. Call it street justice, think before you touch another hair. Oh man, y'all are pedophiles. For a little bit of money, you will sell a child. Ain't the LGBTQ a bunch of pedophiles? You just see a dollar sign cause y'all are pedophiles. Y'all are sick, hey, y'all a bunch of pedophiles. For a little bit of money, you will sell a child. Ain't the LGBTQ a bunch of pedophiles? You just see a dollar sign cause y'all are pedophiles.
Y'all think they need to be stoned. They grooming your children in schools when they leaving their home. Y'all say live and let live, and the each is your own until they disguise it as gay when they creepy and grown. LGBTQ, let God burn them quickly. Bryson, that's hate speech. That's why everyone's against me, and they looking for a villain. I'm so glad they picked me. I would say the F word, but they might suspend me. Fag, 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 wait, that's a British cigarette. Pedophiles got certain tendencies, I mean no disrespect. Before you completely cancel me, please let me interject. Don't let distraction stop you from seeing what's the biggest threat. It's a slippery slope. Let them get married and bake their cake. Now it's let them date little kids if that's who they wanna date. Dancing naked in front of children's skirt. Hit the brakes, just wait. The unrepentant will all burn inside the lake.
Man, y'all are pedophiles. For a little bit of money, you will sell a child. Ain't the LGBTQ a bunch of pedophiles? You just see a dollar sign cause y'all are pedophiles. Y'all are sick, hey, y'all a bunch of pedophiles. For a little bit of money, you will sell a child. Ain't the LGBTQ a bunch of pedophiles? You just see a dollar sign cause y'all are pedophiles. Y'all are sick, hey, y'all a bunch of pedophiles.
Oh, good.
To be continued. I mean, we did pretty good this Abomination Month. But until next time,
Still waiting for the 10 minutes to pop off. What are you talking about? Wow. Thin skin around here lately. All right. Well, bye.
Somebody gotta do it. God soldier. Ayy. Bryson Gray, Alex Stein, let's get it. Ayy. Ayy, ooh.
I know. It's a song.
Ooh, I got everybody mad.
Wow.
Y'all ain't fed up, they got y'all kids watching drag. Acting like strippers while them kids give them cash. Teachers tell them they can change genders in class. Ooh, I got everybody mad. Y'all ain't fed up, they got y'all kids watching drag. Acting like strippers while them kids give them cash. Teachers tell them they can change genders in class. They say why you burn a pride flag in your video. Boy, I'm Bryson Gray, I'm not LaCrea, Andy Mineo. That's not a diss, just the truth. What you tripping for? I preach the Bible, what else would I be in it for? We told y'all about them slippery slopes, not even Disney woke. Hate speech to tell them the truth, but they gon' listen though. Have you ever read Romans 1? We're about to end it though.
Disney's
Talking about
always
live and let live, y'all let them in the door. This is called righteous judgment. What type of parent let their son dress like a woman? I used to think I was Spider-Man. I wasn't. Y'all think it helped him a lot, but it doesn't. Ayy, it's gonna get worse until we fight back. GOP promoting trainings now. I don't like that. His kids lost on the wild path. Get on the right track. Proverbs 17:15. Go recite that. Ooh, I got everybody mad. Y'all ain't fed up. They got y'all kids watching drag. Acting like strippers while them kids give them cash. Teachers tell them they can change genders in class. Ooh, I got everybody mad. Y'all ain't fed up, they got y'all kids watching drag. Acting like strippers while them kids give them cash. Teachers tell them they can change genders in class. Ooh.
Yo, Bryson Gray, why they gotta turn every kid gay? What's wrong with the people today? And you know a homie don't play. And I'm not going gay. I don't care what the media say. I'm so sick of the dancing. No, y'all better not be prancing up in a thong in front of a kid and his mom. You know that it's so wrong. That kid should be playing Donkey Kong, not looking at a man in a thong. Y'all, this is so sick. And you know y'all better quit. You know this is the truth. When I spit up in the booth, I'm prime time, number 99. And you know I grind and shine. Bryson Gray ain't going gay. Not tomorrow, not today. And a homie don't play. We will call you out. And you know I scream and shout. And you know I got that clout. I'm a pimp on a blimp. And I can see it from outer space. Don't do a drag race. You are a big disgrace. Stop all of it right now. Before I have a cow, you making me super sick. You know you better quit.
Enough music for now, but Jesus fucking Christ, man. Anyway. Did I mention, no. What was I going to talk about? Hold on. Fuck, where'd it go? Because I was going to do a whole nother thing before I saw this pop up live. Let me check my playlist. Fuel? Where is it? All right. This is what I wanted to show. So this is cool. So it's body cam footage. From the Secret Service when they got up on top of the roof. Trigger warning? No, fuck that. There's blood. All right. There will be blood. It's just a fact of life.
News more than a week after that attempted assassination of former President Trump in Pennsylvania.
We have newly released footage revealing police and a Secret Service agent identifying the body of Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old sniper.
All right, so we don't know. So this is the guy
yes, that they sent yes, Beaver County sniper scene and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay, all right.
Rifle right there, obviously.
Got it. So the bike in the back, is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
I don't
you're just treating that as suspicious device.
Oh, 1 second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there?
Ooh, I want to tell you something.
All right,
so you can't see this, but there's an open window right where the dickhead scope is at. And they had agents in that window. And other law enforcement. That was like a staging center. They could see the shooter.
if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book bag down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
He's the one that sent the pictures out. I don't know if you got the same ones I did.
I think I did, yeah. He's like got his glasses on and he's...
they blurred it out.
Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley shared the video calling for transparency and accountability regarding security failures. He believes body cam footage provides more information than the Secret Service has shared. Crooks was killed by a police sniper after wounding former President Trump and killing the former fire chief, a supporter of their 50-year-old Corey Comparator.
It really is amazing, though, to watch that and to be transported right there onto that roof, to see the sloped roof, to think about what was going on through their minds there. The idea of them sharing the pictures of that suspect, which I think some of which were posted online. A lot of people were seeing it at the time, which was kind of a gruesome image. But it is remarkable. There's so many questions about this investigation. And, you know, for all these big high-profile investigations in the past, we didn't have body cameras like this. So it'll be interesting to see what we learn from that.
At least they had their body cameras on. But we still won't learn anything because they're not supposed to know anything. And what they're going to do, they're going to get rid of the people up top that know all about this, except for Christopher Wray, because for some reason that son of a bitch is protected, just like Mayorkas. And what's that other dude? Mayorkas, Wray. One more. Fuck, I can't remember him. He'll never get relieved of duty. But you know who did? The only woman that was head of one of those organizations. That doesn't make sense now, does it? Shouldn't. It doesn't make sense to me. But at the same time, it's like, what up, Yeti? Let's see. Oh, this.
Joining me now is
they're talking about picking a vice president, right? And I guess they not really decided. They're talking about the senator or governor from Pennsylvania. Don't remember. They'll go into it. I can't remember if he was a senator or a governor from Pennsylvania, or current governor, that is Jewish. So we know they're going to be working the Jewish vote. But how are you going to work the Jewish vote if a lot of the fan base that can vote is pro-Palestinian? I mean, by all means, continue.
Man who certainly has not shied away from tough conversations, Congressman Dean Phillips, former presidential candidate, Democrat from Minnesota, who also happens to be Jewish.
Oh,
Congressman,
Minnesota.
thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Hey, I was good to be with you, Dan.
All right, so
This is the
what do you
wrong
make
guy.
of this? Do you think the fact that Josh Shapiro is Jewish may prevent him from being selected as the vice presidential candidate?
Well, hey, it's a provocative conversation. First of all, I want to say I think most of us realize
Wait,
John
look
King
at
was
the
just
nose on this
reporting the
motherfucker.
truth.
He looks like
Anybody
Bonzo.
Jewish knows that there's some people that are anti-Semites. They're on the left, they're on the
Oh,
right.
that's a Jewish nose.
We all know there's never been a Jewish vice president or president. But my goodness, I have to tell you, specifically as a Democrat, a party that has always focused on breaking barriers.
Man, fuck that.
I am a little surprised
Oh, shit,
that
I'm on
in
the
this
wrong
day and
video.
age that somehow maybe that breaking barriers.
Fuck that. I want to see a Pacific Islander American president or vice president or me, right? Right? I nominate myself. If I don't get elected, y'all are racist.
Might stop at people of the Jewish faith. There's no question. I don't believe that to be true. I think Kamala Harris, by the way, I
Have
hope
we
she
ever had a
picks,
pagan in office?
Josh Shapiro. I think he'd be a magnificent pick. Kamala Harris, of course, is married to a Jewish man. I think there are a lot of people watching right now who may not know it, but they probably have Jewish heritage. The fact of the matter is,
this might be a bad sign. Maybe they will win the election. Because, it's Jewish. Jewish people love Jewish people because they're Jewish. Makes no sense, right? It does. If you sit back and think about it, it does. Bro,
we're
what
Americans,
the fuck did
and Judaism is a faith. It's a religion. It's not an ethnicity or a nationality.
Oh, it's some old G stuff. Sour diesel, motherfuckers. This is fucking great. It's making my brain move 1,000 miles an hour, but at the same time, I'm kind of getting my words out.
It's almost strange and disconcerting that we're even having the conversation. But I understand it, and I just hope this country can get over this nonsense because it's about American values, American principles. Josh Shapiro certainly has them. But I'm glad you are having this discussion tonight because it is one that has been silent for too long, and I think it's time to actually expose it and get over it.
And do you agree with me, though, that John King on CNN could not have said what he said if he inserted the word Muslim for Jewish?
Huh?
I
already
speak the
had a
truth.
Muslim
I
in
think what
office.
you just said is probably true. I can tell you, even what he did say has been the topic of conversation amongst many Jewish members of Congress, and I'm sure well beyond that. But yes, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, Dan, just moments ago, that there has been a little bit of a sense
There he is, Shapiro.
amongst Jewish members of Congress that somehow the support, the affection, the protection of the far left, if you will, in particular, might stop at our doorstep. I don't think that's the case. I hope it's not the case. But I think it begs the question in light of what we've been feeling in this country and all around the world in recent months. And I want to also note something important, too. Israel and being Jewish are two separate things. Most of us have great affection for the state of Israel for obvious reasons. There's one Jewish majority nation in the entire world that will take us in if, God forbid, there's another pogrom or Holocaust. But they are not the same thing. And there is space and place. And I want to support those who are frustrated by this truth too, Dan. There is space and place. And if there isn't, we got to make it. To
Why does
have
it look
tough
like a Nazi's interviewing
conversations
him,
about
too?
Benjamin Netanyahu, about Israeli policy, without conflating that with Judaism. We're just an Abrahamic faith that thinks and believes the same thing as most everybody watching right now. Decency, don't steal from your neighbor, help the oppressed, right? It's not rocket science. It's actually just human science. And I think we should be having this discussion. I'm glad you're doing it now.
So how is Kamala Harris going to deal with the far left broadly on this issue, but more specifically on the question of the pro-Palestinian folks? I mean, a lot of the pro-Palestinian folks are now thinking, okay, we got rid of Biden. They viewed him as too pro-Israel. Now they're hoping to pull Kamala Harris over to their side. If they do that, she's potentially going to lose support in the general election. How do you expect she's going to address this?
Well, first of all, I believe Kamala Harris is more common sense, reasonable, and ultimately moderate than most people believe. She is a prosecutor by trade in California, of course. And as it relates to this, there's kind of an underreported blessing that she does not have to pander to the far left in a primary. And anybody watching probably knows that, politics is a game of pragmatism. You have to talk to the people who will ultimately be going to the voting booth. And in a primary, it's only 1 in 10 Americans, and it tends to be the far left or far right. I think she will be authentic. I think she will certainly try to invite independents, moderate Republicans. And I don't think we will be seeing a Kamala Harris that will be pandering to the far left in any way, shape, or form. I think she wants to win the presidency, and the way to win the presidency is to expand your base of support. Donald Trump does not believe in that strategy. So I think we're going to see a Kamala Harris that might surprise people, and that actually excites me.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find
so
News
excited.
Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation.
All right, there's still not back up. Keep clicking it and pausing it, thinking it's the video we're watching. And now I forgot what the fuck I was going to say. Anybody thoughts? No. Didn't think so. Oh, I totally did not expect them to take a fucking recess this early, because then I would have waited. Donovan? Montel Williams too? Jesus fucking Christ. I know Willie Brown. That's how she got her good positions. Get it? Oh, fuck me. Did Harris? Nope, Harris doesn't start for another hour and 45 minutes. Oh, that's new. Hold on. Ooh, I have an idea. I'm gonna play some corny music. Now, this is all Restream likes to give out. Play, motherfucker! That's not classical at all. Be right back. I just gotta check something on Rumble real quick. Oh. Where are we at? Short bus! Happy meth day, brother! Okay, that music shit sucks. We're not gonna do that again. But any minute now, they're voting. They're voting. Let's see. Alright. So nothing new. Except for, Cat Pacino. Wow, no one's actually live this morning. That's a plus. And look at my eyeballs. I'm already fucking stoned. But it's okay. I don't have a job. Oh, wait. I'm a terrible person if I don't have a job. All I do is sit at home on the internet. I do. My kids are grown. It's a great thing about it. And look at that guy. What's he doing? So who's their next interview with their short bus? You should do Ed. That would be good. He can give his side of the story. Just kidding. Just kidding. Now, I said the documents came out, and he's on my list of people I will talk shit about. And it's gonna piss some of you off. It's okay. And it's okay. Because if you're pissed off at me, I lose subscribers. And that tells me who the real people are. Or you're just watching because I'm fucking nuts. And sometimes I have some content that provides substance to modern society, other than who's fucking who, which that was kind of dirty, airing it out like that. But who am I to say something? I'm not a saint. I'm just a demigod. Anyway. Since we were waiting and I'm trying to figure out what to say next, because there's so many things I want to talk about, but not sure if most people would understand it. Fracking. Okay, I'll talk. Fracking. Do I think fracking is a good thing? Yes. Yes. It'll help us tap more of our resources, which, whether they want you to believe it or not, they really are. They really are unlimited. We just need technology to go drill deeper, baby, drill deeper. That sounded pretty fucking gay, didn't it? Oh, then I can't say gay jokes. My bad. My bad. I won't do it again for another 15 minutes. That's a good way. And not populated areas, because that's just stupid. That's asking for the ground to get fucked up. Keystone Pipeline, bring that bitch back. Bring that bitch back. Think something like 2,600 people lost a job that day. That fucking Biden said, you know what? Cut sling load. That's creating more jobs, right, Joe? Not at all. That decreased fuel prices, right, Joe? No. Now let's talk about green energy. I used to think solar was a really, really good idea. Because I think, oh, people can have their own electricity and tell the, government electric companies to fuck off. But then I started seeing issues. Solar farms. Never in my life would I think I've ever seen a solar farm, especially when it's better for the environment if we have natural energy, right? Because of sunlight, we're going to use solar panels. You know what's better? Having trees and animals, wildlife, flora, fauna. Sorry, all there. Because you're not really saving the earth doing that. What's that? What is this? Oh, Zippity, that's on my watch list. Damn it. Because I didn't want to watch it last night because I was like, yeah. Anyway, back to the conversation since you guys are interested. What's next? Wind. Great in Europe, I think, especially in Germany. Yes, Yeti. Yes. Yes. Oh, you haven't? Okay. Uh, where was I at? Wind. Bullshit, man. When you put too many of these motherfuckers in the environment, in the water, in the sea, the oceans, because they want to, over in the East Coast, they have wind farms. I can't remember what fucking state it is, but they go out pretty good distance into the water. Oh, it's just wind. It's creating electricity. Yeah, that's true. What happens when it fucks up? What happens to the blades when you retire them? Can't really put them to any good use. What happens if, lubrication, oil, hydraulic fluid? What if the bitch goes down? That shit leaks into the water. Never mind that you fucking had to drill and put fucking cement way down to keep those solar power or those wind things spinning, interrupting the ecosystem and probably destroying coral. What's up, Rockstar? I'm just killing time because they went on recess. It's definitely been more than 10 minutes. What else? I think I'm done on wind. Here's one of my favorites. Because, I can't get that earth vibration thing to, actually be a reality, because they don't want you to know that's real electricity. Wind, and not in the way of those fucking windmills. Winds that can hit the top of those steeples, those tall buildings, and vibrate that antenna, which vibrates the whole building, which creates energy. But if I can't have that, I'll have nuclear. You guys know I talk about nuclear a lot. Is it dangerous? Everything's dangerous. But they're getting better. There's actually another thing. It's not really nuclear. It goes a little bit further, and it's more safe. Somebody had me look into it one time, and I just can't remember what it fucking is. I have to go back into my favorites. Maybe I'll find it. What else? Is there another kind that they're trying to push? Anybody? It's Delaware. Yes. Did it show you how far it goes out? Oh, that's another hour-long video. But as you can see, Zippity and chat, I do know a little something about a lot of these so-called green energies. And by green energies, I mean it creates electricity and not makes the earth better. Just like cutting down trees in the Amazon. How the fuck does that make the earth better? You get rid of enough trees, eventually it's be easier for the earth to erode, because there's nothing holding it in place. That's how you get mudslides. You need those roots to dig in deep into the ground. Like the redwoods. Those things have been around for shit. Forever. Matter of fact, that's probably where they had some of the giants. Yes, giants. And not giants as in like 35 feet tall. Like giants that are like 7, 8, 9 feet tall. Because to somebody like me, that's a fucking giant. 5'8", 9 feet tall. Holy shit. Or even 12 feet. Like, what is it, a basketball goal? Anybody know how tall a basketball goal is? I think it's 25 feet. Maybe. I don't know. Rocky and that tiny guy. What? What are you talking about, Zip? I'm pretty sure you know what you're talking about. I'm just confused. For fuck's sake, did they go on lunch? Is it 10 feet? Yeah, okay. That makes sense. But still, that's pretty fucking tall for somebody like me. I can touch the net. I can touch the net. Does that count? I'm half white, so white guys can't jump, right? Right? I don't know if that's true. No, Larry Bird wasn't really a jumper. All right. Yeah, Shaq. Yeah, they should have every time he got the ball. They should have just like raise it up another 5 feet. Plus, you didn't really want to run into that guy because you'd really not go anywhere. It's like trying to move a mountain. But he did play for the Celtics for a little while, so that's a plus. What? Fuck you. That's my shirt, stupid. Kids. They suck sometimes. But you know what they do? Hey, can you guys go get me some flowers? And they do it. I tell her she's adopted all the time. She'll even tell you, like, I made a fake birth certificate to try and sell it. And I keep telling her, hey, listen, This is not the right coin. You're adopted. We got you from the Philippines, South Africa. She was like, no. I'm like, yeah. We even got grandma in on it, mom's in on it, her sister's in on it. And she's like, it's not true. And then somewhere along the lines, I found this coin. It's a coin that you can use in both South Africa and the Philippines. It says it on there. Africa, South Africa, yeah. And then on the front, it's Philippines. And that really started selling that idea. Oh, yay, Savvy's back. White power. That's what that is, right? You guys remember that? When the AOK sign was white power? I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. AOK, USA! See, Tiny? It was really good. And now I just tell her she's adopted. And she accepts it. And, pretty much saying fuck you, she knows it means love you. If she sneezes, I tell her shut the fuck up. Fatherly love. Apparently, she looks at for a certain type of male. And she thinks she finds somebody, but they're not as masculine as she would prefer. Her words, not mine. Anyway, that's not the way. It's not dirty. You gotta talk to your kids. Like, I know more than mom does. All kids like to talk to me because it's that sounded bad too. My kids experience the wisdom because I'll tell them something once and like, hey, don't do this because this is what's gonna happen, and they're not gonna, and they're like, no. I'm like, all right, I warned you, and then it happens, and typically within a week, 2 weeks, a month, Dad, you were right. No shit, I was right. I was telling you by experience, you stupid dumb fuck. Because I've done a lot of bad stuff in my life. Not like going to jail type stuff. But they back? I'm just saying I wasn't I like to fight. Yeah. I'm definitely a big kid. I really am. Uh, goes back to that old Oh shit. Hold on.
Ranking member decrying the state of political violence in this country. It's completely unacceptable. We have a democratic system
House
that allows
roboting?
for us to disagree, but not to take those
That's not cool at
disagreements
all.
to violence. That's what we have elections for. And I want to also thank you and all of the FBI for the work that you do, and frankly, the abuse, unwarranted abuse and criticism that have been directed to you by conspiracy theorists and others. It doesn't make your hard job any easier, and I want you to know that many of us notice that and appreciate the work that you and your team are doing. Let me just ask a couple of quick questions. First, many of us are interested in the motives of the shooter here. When it's an assault on a political figure, you immediately assume there's a political motive, and that may be the case here. We don't know yet. But I was interested in what you're seeing on his phone. The press has reported that he had pictures not only of Mr. Trump, but of Mr. Biden and various other members, political
I told
figures.
you. I'm gonna pause this. Remember, I think it was yesterday I told you that he was literally looking for any rally that was closest to him, and the closest time frame and closest to his house just happened to be a Trump rally.
Can you discern, was there, an element of, mainly Republicans, maybe Democrats, was it all over the board? Can you enlighten us about that?
Well, this is a place where it's particularly important for me to reiterate the caveat that I've included before, because in this instance in particular, we have a lot of legal process out for additional accounts and things like that that the shooter is associated with. So we're hoping to learn more, and we're still exploiting a number of the digital devices.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that we do not yet have a clear picture of his motive, and I think it's important for me to explain, because I understand, of course, why everybody wants to know the answers to those questions. Often in an investigation, from interviewing people that the subject was in close contact with, looking at the individual's social media accounts, his messages, often things physical.
What if they can't find his motive because he didn't have one? What if he was actually a product of the brainwashing and manipulation of a young mind because of the media? Maybe, I mean, when I was a kid, they used to blame it on fucking video games. So, and rap music. You guys remember that? Video games and rap music was making crime in the United States.
Evidence in the person's residence. You might see a manifesto, things like that. We're not seeing that yet, but we are digging in hard because this is one of the central questions for us.
Hey.
What I can say is that the shooter appears to have done a lot of searches of public figures in general, but so far we're seeing kind of news articles and things like that, and so the images that have been reported about, really what we're talking about there are when you do a news search of an article, the image appears in the cache, as opposed to like a search for that specific individual. But again, I really want to be clear that that's a place.
I think I said that
where there's a lot of
originally.
work right now, and so more to come.
But I think it's more
I
than
thank you
that.
for that clarification. We're interested also in the role of access to weapons when it comes to this terrible crime. The shooter used a semi-automatic rifle, really a weapon of war.
Oh,
that
Jesus fucking
sadly
Christ.
has also been used in mass shootings around the country, including in my own district. It seems to me that the assault weapons ban that was once in place has to be a part of the national answer to curbing the epidemic of gun violence in America. I wonder if you could, with your help, Director Wray, understand a few aspects of the investigation. It's my understanding that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives,
Why are they not here?
ATF, was quickly able to trace the gun's purchaser, using records from an out-of-business gun store, records that the government is required to correct. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have suggested that collection should stop. There have been efforts to digitize it, which have been resisted. Can you tell us about how the origin of this gun purchase was discovered and the technology used?
I guess what I can say is we located a number of firearms associated with the shooter and his family. I think it was a total of, 14 in the house. The weapon that he used for the attempted assassination
Bought 6 years ago?
An AR-style rifle that was purchased legally, that he is my understanding, acquired, bought actually from his father, who was the one who originally bought it, again, legally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, so I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. Director, I'll try to ask questions that are answerable too. I think that's been done pretty well on both sides. You do the advanced threat assessment and deliver that information as to the general threat and then specifics as to protected people to the Secret Service. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. The Secret Service does a threat assessment, but they're doing that based on intelligence that they receive from a number of sources, including, of course, the FBI. So we share, whenever we have threat information related to a particular individual or protectee, then we share it with the Secret Service at a number of levels.
So you're a participant, but ultimately the responsibility for threat assessment as to these individuals belongs to the Secret Service.
Well, again, the threat assessment for the individual belongs to the Secret Service, but we are an important part of that because we share threat information, if we have any. They get threat information from a variety of sources.
So, and you get them from that same variety of sources. They've got no sources that are excluded
Are those
from the
airborne
FBI,
wings,
do they?
Mr. Issa?
Well, I don't know. I'm not aware of any that are excluded from the FBI, but they may receive information that comes directly to them that didn't come to us.
Sure. Okay. Director, do you believe that former President Trump was a high-risk threat under your assessment?
Well, I believe that former President Trump, really, frankly, like any president or former president, is a very high-profile figure and attracts a lot of, unfortunately, of the kind of threats we've been talking about.
It's fair to say, not on a scale of 1 to 1,000,000 with little nuances, but on a scale of 1 to 10, President Trump's risk was very similar to a current president, very similar to, because he was the presumptive nominee and leading in the polls and so on, that he was a high risk by any standard. Is that correct?
Certainly, there's a reason why he has so much protection around him.
Okay, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh,
the
get
son
him!
of assassinated senator and the nephew of an assassinated president. Would you say he was also, as a presidential candidate, at significant risk?
Again, I think any presidential candidate raises some level of risk. It might vary from.
They already
candidate to
caught
candidate.
one guy outside.
Okay. So, in a nutshell, the day before this attack, President Trump was documented not to have gotten on multiple occasions from the Secret Service what they asked for. The day after, it looks like they're getting more. The day before, RFK had been denied by the president multiple times, Secret Service protection. The day after, he now has it. So now my question is the actions of a 20-year-old with a lone gunman on a roof sufficient to change the risk assessment in your mind for President Trump and RFK? Or are we just realizing the threat that was always there and being more appropriate in matching it? And I know that's a little vague, but you've been at this for a long time. Hindsight is 20/20. Now that we have hindsight, is it fair to say that giving Robert F. Kennedy Jr. security, upping the security, including drones, overhead support for the president, former president, these are all things that in hindsight should have been done the day before?
Well, let me try to answer your question this way. Of course, as I said, the assessments of the level of security to be provided to individual protectees.
No, I understand it's a Secret Service decision.
But what I would say to you is that, and I've been saying for quite some time, including in front of committees of this Congress, that we are in an elevated threat environment, and we have been for some time. And that comes from a variety of quarters. It is, quite frankly, a dangerous time to be a prominent public official.
And in regards to that, the other side has spent a lot of time talking about what people on the right have said. But there was an attempted assassination on a Supreme Court justice.
Yep.
We have had the highest-ranking senator on the other side of this body saying that there were actions, that they were accountable. We have had multiple members of Congress in both the House and the Senate berating the character of members of the Supreme Court as a result of their decisions made, both, sometimes 6-3, sometimes unanimous, whatever. Are those comments, not any one of them, but are those comments and the generation of that sort of, oh, this guy's bad for democracy, this Supreme Court justice is a threat to democracy, is that the kind of thing that raises the threat level, and would you caution against that?
Well, I do believe that we've seen an increase in threats of violence, which again, that's the FBI's lane, not rhetoric, no matter how despicable or heated it is, but violence and threats of violence. We have seen an uptick in threats towards judges, among other prominent public officials, including, as you say, a case that we helped investigate involving a threat to a sitting Supreme Court justice.
An attempt.
An attempt.
Yeah,
outside his house.
And I think it's a reflection of a broader phenomenon that we are seeing in this country, where people, again, very passionate, I respect that, very angry, I respect that, but there's a right way and a wrong way to express yourself when you're angry. And violence and threats of violence just can't be it. And that's where we fit in. It's not my role as FBI director to call out, particular people's rhetoric. There's a place for that, but that's not my role as FBI director. But when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that has to be treated as unacceptable, and that's the way we look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Director, when did the FBI learn that Iran was threatening President Trump's life?
Oh, shit, yes.
So I want to be a little bit careful here, not to talk about specific classified information.
So it is true.
We have been for quite some time, and I'll stick with what's in the open record. We, for some time, and I in particular for some time, have been calling out the efforts by the Iranian government to attempt to retaliate for the killing of Soleimani by going after current or former prominent U.S. officials, and we've even had an
Who are the other
indictment
officials?
against it. And I think that we need to recognize the brazenness of the Iranian regime, including right here in the United States. And I expect that we're going to see more of it, and I expect there'll be more coming on that. I'm not aware of any threat information related to protectees that wasn't, passed in a timely way, but I can't really get into specifics here.
It's the minority's time here, but I just felt that was a question the committee needed to understand, and it sounds like you've known that for a long time, and that information was conveyed to the Secret Service?
Any information related to threats against the former president, which again, as we've sort of talked about, happens all too often, is something that we have a whole process we routinely share with the Secret Service at a number of levels in a timely way, and to my knowledge, that has consistently been followed.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Director Ray.
Guam is still good, bro. Guam is still good.
FBI is the independent law enforcement agency under the Department of Justice. Is that correct?
Yes.
And does the FBI director currently report to anyone?
Well, you mean in a chain of command?
Yeah, stupid.
Reporting structure kind of thing? Yeah, so the FBI is part of the Justice Department. On the org chart, you would see that the FBI director, and this has been true for decades, reports to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General. Obviously, reports in a communication sense, I report to any number of people.
As opposed to a micromanagement reporting system.
Huh?
Correct.
And you would take issue, would you not, with any proposal that would change or alter that chain of command and place you or place a FBI director in the position of reporting directly to the president? Would you not? You would oppose that?
I don't think that would be a wise reporting structure. I think the structure that we've had for decades now makes sense. I think there's a difference between independence in a sort of organizational structure perspective and independence in terms of the way you do the work. Obviously, the FBI is part of the Justice Department.
Well, reporting directly to the president would eliminate your independence, would it not?
I don't think it would help.
Yeah. And you're familiar with Project 2025, are you not?
I mean, I've seen news reports about it. I'm not particularly familiar with it.
You're aware that it is a game plan for President Trump's first 120 days in office, correct?
I'm really not familiar with the details.
Oh, you're trying to fucking bait him.
And what he proposes to do is to force the FBI director to appoint, report directly to him. That's what he wants to do within the first 120 days. He also wants to eliminate the position of FBI General Counsel. That is also set forth in Project 2025. How would you recommend that?
I think the FBI's Office of General Counsel serves an incredibly
I think
important
Project
role,
2025
including
is paid for by
in terms
George
of
Soros.
advising our workforce. We have 38,000 people. The idea of having an organization like ours, an independent law enforcement agency like ours that doesn't have its own general counsel's office doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it would seem like any proposal that would force the director to report to the president, and then there would be no legal counsel for the director of the FBI. That seems like it's
why
an
not?
attempt to neuter the FBI and render it accountable only to the president. Isn't that correct?
Well, let me put it this way. I recognize that the FBI director, this FBI director and every FBI director before me, serves at the pleasure of the president. And that's part of our system. I was appointed by President Trump. I respect that. I think that's a part of our structure. But independence in terms of how we do our work is what matters to me. And we need to be able to do our work in a way that is free from political interference.
Well, you wouldn't be able to do that by reporting everything you do to the president and getting his authority and approval before you take action, correct?
I mean, it ultimately goes to him anyway.
Approach.
And then there's even a proposal to replace many of those 38,000 dedicated civil servants who work for the FBI, replace them with a MAGA group that has pledged its allegiance to Donald Trump. What
the
danger
fuck are
would
you
that
talking
bring
about?
to the FBI if that were to happen?
Well,
Where did he
again, I
fucking come
haven't read
this?
or reviewed
Well,
this thing that you're
assuming
referring
what
to.
I say is true.
But
Assuming.
the FBI is made up of 38,000 dedicated career law enforcement professionals. It has no political appointees of any kind unless you count me as a
You don't
nominee
want
of the
that to
former
change
president.
either, do
I
you?
don't think that should change.
You
I
don't
think
want
that is
a bunch
that is
of MAGA
part of how we do
loyalists
our work.
being the employees of the FBI.
We're coming up on 116 years of the FBI, and that's the way it has been for 116
It would
years.
be
for a reason.
crazy to take 38,000 MAGA loyalists and put them at the FBI. That's frightening. That's what Project 2025 proposes, and I'm glad to know that you are not with that program, and with that I yield
That's
back.
your
Back,
program.
gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Was the shooter on the FBI's radar in any
Ooh.
way prior to the assassination attempt?
We did not have any information about the shooter. He was not in our holdings before the shooting.
No communication in any chat rooms, no CIs or confidential human sources have any interaction with
No, we've run a thorough search for the subject through all of our holdings, and he was not in them anywhere.
Were there any FBI agents or informants present at the Trump rally in Butler?
Oh, yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Really?
And Mr. Jordan was talking to you about Iran. Were law enforcement resources diverted from the protection of President Trump to John Bolton as a consequence of concern that Mr. Bolton might have been the target of Iranian
What?
malign efforts?
That's really a Secret Service decision. I don't know the answer to that. That's really something they would know better. What I can tell you
John
is
Bolton
that,
got more security?
There are a number of individuals. You mentioned one who we've brought a case, a specific criminal case for the Iranians targeting for assassination. But how the
Are you going
Secret
to
Service
get that answer
allocates-
to us, whether or not resources were diverted from Trump to Bolton? Is that just going to be part of your review?
I think that's going to be part of the reviews by the Inspector General.
The Inspector
and
General for
after-
DHS, right?
Of
The one you
DHS
answered.
and the outside
Got
panel.
it. And I think that's an important point because the Inspector General for DHS has really fallen out of favor with the administration because he's been pointing out all the problems on the border with Mayorkas and Biden, and we're always kind of worried that they're about to fire him, which would be a really bad idea now that this role that you've identified is so critical. Be a bad idea to fire the IG for DHS during the pendency of this, right, Mr. Director?
I don't think that would be a good idea.
I'm with you on that. So I want to zoom out a little bit. How often do you brief President Biden?
Oh, good question.
You mean on this
No,
specific
just generally.
case?
No, in your role as FBI director.
I mean, I don't know that I could give you a number.
Is it like weekly, monthly, daily?
It's not It's not at a regular cadence. There have been times when there have been months at a time when I haven't, and then there have been times when several days apart I have. It's always with other people.
The vice president, is she typically there?
Often has been.
Okay,
Hunter Biden?
So when did you notice his decline?
In my interactions, in my role, all my interactions with the current president have been completely professional.
Right, but I mean the cognitive decline. I'm not saying he treated you unprofessionally.
Why are we talking
just
about this?
Maybe not picking things up as quickly as he used to.
Again, I don't meet with him very often, but what you're describing is not something that I've observed during my interactions with him.
I mean, we've had it observed so often that the ranking member and Mr. Schiff on this committee have said that he could no longer continue as a candidate. And so, since you're the FBI director, I was just sort of wondering, like, who's running the country?
Can you pan that camera to? God damn it!
Like if something bad happened, you'd have to go brief President Biden about it right now. God forbid.
And on any number of occasions, I have briefed the president, and as I said, those briefings have all been uneventful and unremarkable.
Oh, I can imagine them being uneventful. But in the work where the vice president's also present, like you say, there's like more than half the time there's these briefings, she's there too?
I don't know if I'd said more than half the time. Certainly, there have been times where she's been present. There have been other times where she hasn't.
I take you at your word when you say this is the most complicated threat environment you've ever observed over a long career in law enforcement. And I'm just kind of wondering, with this assassination attempt, with the invasion at our border, with all the Hamas that have been let in that you've talked about,
Chinese.
Like, is Biden up to it? And if he's not up to it, and you're a guy who's been regularly briefing him, like who's been in on this conspiracy to hide the real Joe Biden from all of us for years? It never occurred to you that this guy wasn't up to it in all these briefings you did?
As I said, my briefings with the president have all been completely fine.
Were they between
briefed,
10 a.m. and 4 p.m.?
He's asked questions. There hasn't been anything of note in the area that you're talking about.
Yeah, did you ever have to brief him before? Has basically put him out to pasture. And since you had close proximity and the vice president had close proximity, I'm just kind of wondering if you were being straight with all of us about how things were going with him. I guess we'll have to figure that out.
You can count on me to be straight with you, sir.
We'll see.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to recognize, unfortunately, the fact that our colleague and my colleagues side by side made for many, many years in this committee, Sheila Jackson Lee, is no longer with us. She was a great member and a force for America, and her loss is felt and is great. Secondly, I'd like to say to the FBI director that there were some remarks made when you were introduced, preemptory remarks saying that people don't have great faith in the FBI and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have great faith in the FBI, and I think most of us on this side of the aisle do. And we appreciate your work and appreciate your being here. Some on the other side of the aisle have cast aspersions upon the FBI and upon law enforcement. And if they don't want to support law enforcement, that's their business.
Y'all motherfuckers wanted to fund the police.
The FBI is the top rank of law enforcement in our country. So I thank you and all of your people that work with you. Secondly, there's been some questions about the FBI maybe being weaponized. Did President Biden ever ask you to get involved in the case in Orlando, Florida, where Kevin McCarthy says that Mr. Gates is investigated for some sexual involvement with a 17-year-old girl? Did the president or anybody in the Democratic Party, as Mr. McCarthy has suggested, weaponized you and tried to get you involved in that case?
No, sir.
Good. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure of that.
What the fuck is even going
Butler,
on?
Pennsylvania. I read something about a ladder. He used a ladder to get up on that roof. And the
Why
ladder
the fuck are they bringing extra shit into this? That's petty shit. Both of these motherfuckers getting off track. Both of them.
found somewhere a distance away. Is that true?
So we do know that he purchased a ladder. I think it was.
Oh, you didn't know about that?
It was about a
Matt
5 foot tall type of ladder. But importantly, we did not find the ladder at the scene. So it's not clear that he used the ladder to get on top of the roof.
So you don't think
we're
the ladder...
still digging into all that, things related to the ladder and his access to the roof. But he did buy a ladder. but the ladder was not found at the scene.
Ladder didn't have any feet on it. It didn't walk off.
Right.
Thank you, sir. There have been a lot of threats against public officials. We've seen Mr. Scalise terribly shot, and we saw Gabby Gifford shot, and other Congress people, and many of us have had death threats. And
those sound like
the
Republicans.
FBI has, I think, been made aware of those to help protect us, and I appreciate that greatly. But we've also had election officials and poll workers threatened. What is the FBI doing in consultation with other law enforcement to ensure every eligible voter can safely and confidently cast a ballot this year?
So when it comes to threats to election workers in particular, we participate in the election threats task force that DOJ set up. We also, and there have been quite a number already of arrests and convictions under that task force. We have got a number of investigations underway that involve all kinds of threats to election workers, ranging from online threats to there was even some mailings that included fentanyl. So there's been a number of types of threats to election workers. And these are, after all, people who are putting in their own time for the good of the country to try to help us have a functioning democracy. And so the idea that they would be targeted with violence is just outrageous. We are sharing information with election officials about things to be on the lookout for. We have election crime coordinators in all 50 states.
You'll be prepared for Election Day with additional, FBI will be looking out for.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Jeffrey Epstein. Been in the news a lot lately about involvement with certain people high in politics involved. Did the FBI conduct the raid on his townhouse in New York when he was incarcerated in New York? There was a raid on his East Side townhouse.
Well, I don't know about a raid. I know we executed a number of searches in the course of our fairly extensive investigation related to Mr. Epstein. Can you tell me
during that search if you came across and have within the possession of the FBI tapes of him with other individuals that he might have taken in people in compromising positions?
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything I can share related to that. I can see if there's information we could provide and maybe get back to you on it.
If there were tapes of people in prominent positions, friends of his he posed for pictures with, possibly in compromising positions, it would be
in the picture
public, I think, has a right to see those.
Well, I mean, how we handle evidence recovered in a criminal investigation has all kinds of rules that apply to it. I recognize the intense public interest in the subject, but we'd have to follow our rules. But I'm happy, like I said, I'm happy to follow up with my team on it.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate your service. And
he was trying to get at Trump being one of them.
Gentlemen, yield the last 5. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here. How many shots did the shooter fire?
Well, we know that he fired at least 8 because we recovered 8 cartridges on the roof.
Okay, and are all the cartridges and the unspent bullets, have they been, you know how many there are? You've accounted for all of those?
We
I assume, yeah.
We believe we have. Again, there was lots of work still ongoing, but yes, we believe we have accounted.
And did the recovered shells, the cartridges, match the shooter's rifle?
My recollection is yes.
Okay. And you conducted analysis that confirms that?
Well, we work with ATF, but yes, so some of the work has been divided up. But.
And how many shells casings were recovered from the location of the counter snipers?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
From the counter snipers location.
That I don't have the answer, at least here at my fingertips.
Okay. Did the blood and tissue pattern of the shooter, did it match the stories or the witness testimony that you've heard so far?
Can you, well, I'm not sure I'm following the question.
Well, I assume you've interviewed the counter snipers, or you have that evidence and other witnesses describing the kill of the shooter. And I'm wondering if the blood and tissue and brain matter is consistent with the testimony that you're receiving. In other words, is the physical...
In terms of the manner of death?
Exactly. Is the physical evidence consistent with where the shot from the counter sniper took place?
Yeah. So the autopsy is being handled by, as is not unusual, the state authorities. My understanding is thus far. I don't think it's fully complete, which is not, again, not totally unusual. But so far, nothing remarkable on that front.
That's from the body itself, but from actually the scene where the shooter was found, is everything consistent with the testimony, the physical evidence at the scene? Is that consistent with the testimony you've seen, that you've heard so far?
So far, yes. Again, ongoing investigation.
Were you able to determine whether the shooter took the gun up with him when he climbed up to the top of the roof, or was it already placed there somewhere?
So that is something that we're drilling into right now that we don't know the answer to yet. I can tell you, which may be relevant, though, to your question, that, and I don't think this has been reported yet, that the weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe, because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him, the first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around beforehand. So that doesn't mean he wasn't, obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Did he have a scope?
I believe so, but as I sit here right now, I don't remember.
Okay. You mentioned about 2 hours before the incident that he'd had a drone and he was using a drone. Instead of me putting words in your mouth, just tell me how you discovered the drone, how you discovered the time, and how you discovered, if you can describe what he would have been observing with the drone and how you determined that, please.
So this is something that's very much ongoing right now. We're going back and forth with our lab as they continue to do work on it. What I would say is the drone was in his car. As I said, we've been able to, by exploiting the drone, determine its use and flight paths. There were no pictures or videos on the drone of the day of the rally, for example.
What about his phone?
But we have been able to reverse engineer the flight path of the drone from the day of the rally, and that's how we know that for about 11 minutes, from I think it's around 3:50 p.m. to 4 p.m., somewhere in that range, he was flying the drone, and we have the flight path. It's about 200 yards away from where former President Trump would ultimately be speaking. And so that would have primarily given him a vantage point. Trying to think how to describe this. If the former president's podium is that way, the drone would be over here looking directly at him. Say 200 yards again off this way, looking back. So it would have shown the shooter, we think, again, we're still doing more work on this. I really want to qualify what I'm saying, but I'm trying to be transparent and lean in here. We think it would have shown him kind of what would have been behind him.
But when you say behind him, behind the shooter?
Correct. Like, in other words, almost like giving him a rear view mirror of the scene behind him, except again, he wasn't flying it overhead while he was later back for the assassination.
But he would have had, with the drone, he would have been able to also assess.
Yeah, it's a recon.
Kind of, because the stage, I assume, was already set. He would have been able to assess that angle with the rooftop as well, forward and backward, I assume.
Well, certainly going towards the podium. Again, we're still trying to figure out exactly what he saw, because we're having to, in effect, because there's no recording of what he saw during those 11 minutes, our hypothesis at this point, the experts think he would have been live streaming it. And so we're trying to, in effect, say, okay, if this was the flight pattern, given these capabilities of the drone, what would you have seen? What could you have seen for those 11 minutes? And again, it wasn't over the stage or the kind of the hub of the rally. It was about 200 yards away, but it looks like it would have been looking, let's say, length of a football field or so, more, kind of towards the podium.
Great, thank you, Mr.
How many separate times was the shooter on the premises?
Ooh.
So again, with the...
What the fuck? Better be important. Joe Biden will resign. This is really breaking news. Come on. Same, Sabby. I was like, really?
Qualify that, I'd have to go back and look to be sure of that part.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And then he came back in the afternoon, so that would be, I guess, a third time for good. But that included things like this drone activity we just talked about.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for appearing. Thank you for the extraordinary job that you're doing.
Oh, fuck me.
Right now on Capitol Hill, the members of the House Judiciary Committee are questioning FBI Director
We know,
Christopher
shut
Wray
up.
about the Bureau's investigation into the Trump assassination attempt. Hello, everyone. I'm Allison Maloney filling in for John today. Thanks for being with us. It's a big day in our
Fuck you. Get off my screen. What the fuck?
Holdings.
So in terms of our ability to access it, we have been able to get into and exploit a number of electronic devices, digital devices, but not all of them yet. And then within his various accounts, we've been able to get access to some of them, but some of them we're still waiting on. Some of them we may never get access to because of the encryption issue that it presents an increasingly vexing barrier for law enforcement, not just the FBI, but for law enforcement all over the country. But we're still drilling into that. We have some information. Some places we've been able to look. Some places we will be able to look. Some places we may never be able to see, no matter how good our legal process is. But that's what we're looking at right now. In terms of what we've been able to find so far, a lot of the usual repositories of information have not yielded anything notable in terms of motive or like ideology. Having said that, it does appear fairly clear that he was interested in public figures, kind of more broadly, and I think this is important, that starting somewhere around July 6th or so, he became very focused on former President Trump and this rally. And so one of the things that I can share here today that has not been shared yet is that we've just in the last couple of days found that from our review, to your point about devices, analysis of a laptop that the investigation...
Sabby. Shut up. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to pick on you. Fuck. Sabby. Continue.
ties to the shooter reveals that on July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy?
What?
And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. That is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
And when you say that his electronic holdings indicated an interest in different public figures, without revealing anything you're not comfortable revealing about those public figures, can you tell us anything generally about them, either the offices they hold, their political party, or was it simply people of a high profile?
Well, a couple things. First, the images that we've recovered so far from, I can't remember which of his various devices, appear to be what we call cached images from searches of news articles. So if you do a news article search, of course, if there are photos on it, those photos get stored automatically in your cache, as opposed to me searching or him searching for a specific person and getting up images of that person. As far as the pictures that are like that, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it so far, other than these are all prominent public people, but they cover both parties, they cover both U.S. people and even some foreign public officials. So that part doesn't appear to, that one repository of information doesn't appear to be overly indicative of motive, other than interest in public figures, but that could be just because he was reading news stories. So we're still trying to drill into that. That's why all of these outstanding legal process returns that we're waiting on for various accounts, platforms, et cetera, you know, any one of them could be one that would have very indicative, very important information.
If I could be permitted one very short additional question, Chairman. From that, any indication of any other particular target? That is someone who was not just sort of generically the subject of the searches you described, but for which there was more of an interest than others?
There's the information I just described at the moment does not appear particularly indicative of targeting in its own right. But again, that dot, once we get other information, could connect in a way that might be more meaningful. But I'm sharing that piece of information with this committee and with the American public, but I think it's important that we put down a qualification. This does not appear to be some kind of target list or something like that. This is cached images from running searches of news stories. And again, there's nothing at the moment, there's no pattern from that particular piece of information that is overly remarkable so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Director, you previously told us that you consider the situation on the southern border to be a massive security threat to our country. Is that still your assessment?
I stand by my prior testimony, and in fact, just in the last month or so, we've done, conducted a significant series of arrests. I say we, our Joint Terrorism Task Force is working with ICE of a number of individuals with suspected international terrorism ties, and I have also been very vocal about the fact that since the last time I appeared before you, that we are increasingly concerned about the possibility not just of a foreign terrorist-inspired attack, which is very much a concern, but even the potential for a coordinated foreign terrorist attack, perhaps like what we've seen against the concert hall in Russia, for example, but just here in the United States.
Well, the 19 suicide bombers who overstayed visas were responsible for 3,000 American deaths on 9/11. What's your best estimate of the number of foreign terrorists who are now in our country?
I don't know that I could give you that number. What I can tell you is we have lots of foreign terrorism-related investigations, but that doesn't mean that all of them came in, illegally or anything like that.
It seems to me that the simplest act of terrorism would be for dozens of guerrillas to attack low-security, high-density venues, for example, Friday night high school football games all across the country at the same hour with bombs and automatic weapons. That would produce thousands of casualties from coast to coast in a matter of minutes. How likely is such a scenario?
Well, what you're describing would require, of course, a lot of coordination. But what I will tell you, and I think you're onto a particularly important point from my perspective, which is that unlike the 9/11 attacks, which, again, I was in FBI headquarters on the day of 9/11, and so I remember it
I was
vividly,
getting
and
drunk
I've
in
spent plenty
Korea.
of time in the period after that in my prior positions engaged with the families and the victims. But what we're seeing more and more with the foreign terrorist threat, and frankly also the domestic terrorism threat, is a focus on kind of like what you're talking about, well, what I would call soft targets, which is really for the American people's benefit, just intelligence community speak for where everyday people live their everyday lives.
What terrorist groups have now infiltrated our country that you're tracking?
Well, I don't know that I would say infiltrated. We have investigations as we speak that relate to ISIS and its affiliates. We have investigations as we speak that relate to Al-Qaeda. We have investigations as we speak that relate to Al-Shabaab. We have investigations as we speak that relate to the Iranian proxies, Hezbollah, and so frankly, even the IRGC Quds Force itself.
What foreign criminal gangs?
Yakuza! Just kidding, no Yakuza.
That you're most concerned with?
Well, foreign criminal gangs, we obviously have investigations, a lot of investigations into, gangs like MS-13.
There we go, about fucking time.
And some of its counterparts. Although I think if you were to talk to most chiefs and sheriffs like I'm doing every week, we shouldn't underestimate how prevalent neighborhood gangs are, really. A lot of the gang violence
Well, I'm concerned about those that we've allowed in through the southern border and what threat they are now posing. Do you believe that the vetting performed at the southwest border is adequate to ensure that aliens with terrorist or criminal gang ties are not being released into the United States?
Well, it's not really for me to speak to the vetting. What I would tell you is that
you have to deal with it once they're released in the United States.
And one of the concerns that I have, which I touched on briefly in my opening, is there's been a lot of focus on the number of known or suspected terrorists encountered at the border, and that number has increased over the last 5 or 6 years, and that should be of concern. But frankly, to me, the bigger concern is individuals who weren't either weren't on the watch list at the time they came in because there wasn't information known yet that ties them to terrorism, and it's only after they get in that some new piece of information develops somewhere overseas. And
I feel like
that's a bigger.
they have more Americans on that watch list than they do illegals.
They basically vet against a blank sheet of paper. If they don't have a record in this country, Border Patrol probably doesn't have any record. They're released into the country, and you find out later of the dangers.
Right, or if they use fake documents and there aren't biometrics to connect them. Sometimes there are people who come in who, because of the nature of the threat information that puts somebody on the watch list, there wasn't fingerprints from the person at the time, because not every piece of intelligence comes with fingerprints. So then the guy comes in using fake ID,
and of course,
there's no reason to connect them.
And of course, the 2 million gotaways you know absolutely nothing about.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about absolutely nothing, because we may come across them in other things. I mean, one of the key parts of our collective defense here is that we work with 800,000 sworn law enforcement across the country, and we train them on the right questions to ask and things like that, so that we can build in additional eyes and ears if they, do a traffic stop or whatever happens to be. We run a greater chance of leveraging all that to pick up people who may have slipped through the cracks.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Director, we're about 100 days until the election. Russia has attacked our democracy in past elections. Are they seeking to do it in this
It's the guy that likes to sleep with Chinese spies.
We assess that the Russian government continues to want to influence and in various ways interfere with our democracy, with our electoral process. In fact, just in the last few weeks, we announced a significant disruption of a generative AI-enhanced social media bot farm, essentially, of the Russians that was designed to be an influence operation, and some of the fictitious profiles of those bots purported to be U.S. persons. So they're still at it. We've seen that in election cycle after election cycle.
Do the Russians have a preferred candidate?
I'm not sure that I could speak to that here, but certainly what I would tell you is it's not just the Russians. And I think that's important for people to know, too. There's a lot of attention to the Russians, as there should be. But we also know, you may recall that in 2020, Director Ratcliffe and I announced an effort by the Iranians to try to interfere. And more recently, we've had indictments related to China. 34 Chinese MPS officers creating fictitious personas.
No shit, dude.
False information online.
That's
full of
crazy.
narratives designed to sow divisiveness, discord, undermine us. And I'm talking about narratives.
Because that's not
they
that
were
far away
pushing,
either.
Again, purporting to be Americans, but actually Chinese MPS officers. For example, trashing any suggestion that COVID came from a lab leak, or trashing U.S. law enforcement on the occasion of the anniversary of George Floyd's death.
And shifting to the attempted assassination on the former president, I want to make it clear, in America, violence has never been the answer. Not on a certain day in January or a recent day in July.
God.
And I just want to go through the shooting just briefly with you. How many armed officers were within the perimeter, just ballpark figure?
You know, that really goes to the security posture, which is the subject of the DHS Inspector General's review and the outside panel, independent panel that's
Would you say probably more than 100, though?
I have to believe that number, but I don't have that number at my fingertips. Our focus is on the shooter and his attack.
And the shooter was able to get 8 shots off before he was killed.
That's what it would appear, yes.
Type of weapon used by the shooter was an assault rifle?
Was an AR-style rifle.
So that means one trigger pull, 1 round. Is that right?
Essentially.
Do you like to shoot?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know the difference between an AR and a bolt action rifle?
I'm not going to try to sit here and engage on sort of firearms expertise, but I've fired a variety of weapons. But
had the shooter used a bolt action rifle, would that have been one trigger pull, 1 round?
That's my understanding.
Would there had to have been more, well, on an assault rifle, trigger pull, round, bolt action, non-assault rifle, what's the difference? Is it faster, slower?
None of them are assault rifles.
He was able to get more rounds off more quickly than he would have with other kinds of weapons.
And that's my point, is that we can add additional resources to protect political candidates, and we should. The people who went to that rally deserved to be protected from gun violence, just like the students at Parkland deserve to be protected from gun violence, just like the babies at Sandy Hook deserve to be protected from gun violence. So we'll devote more resources. We've added a presidential candidate who is also now protected. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we have armed this country to the teeth. And we have allowed...
And you know what, Swalwell? Ask yourself why nobody has actually tried to attack the United States, except for terrorist attacks. No one wants to do a ground attack. Explain that one, Swalwell. You know why? Because they know they can't do it.
The most dangerous people to have access to the most dangerous weapons. I say that as a parent of a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, the 2 oldest who have done multiple...
You know what, Swalwell? Was your kid at a football game when somebody let off 5 rounds? Was your kid's situation in that? Mine was. So don't tell me about fucking children and guns. Your kids will never experience that.
In their classrooms. I say that as a brother to 2 police officers who walk a very violent beat. And I say that as an elected official who believes that
because your brother's
my
a cop.
colleagues deserve
Okay,
to
Jeff.
be as safe as I deserve to be when we are at political rallies. And so we really need to step back and think, if we allow these weapons to be in our country, can we truly protect our elected officials, and can we truly protect, most importantly, our children and the next generation? I yield back.
I can. I don't know about
Gentleman
you.
yields back. It
Because
is-
all these liberals that don't want guns, what happens if we have a terrorist attack invade this country? What are they going to do? Oh, they're not bad. I'm just going to learn Chinese or Russian. Remember, there was a movie about Russian invasion. From the Sky. Paratroopers. Airborne.
Good to have Mr. Massey back with us today. Some of us had a chance to go to Kentucky over the last few weeks and visit with Thomas and his family and hear all kinds of wonderful stories about Rhonda. Amazing, amazing lady, gentle spirit, and we're glad to have Mr. Massey back with us. And next 5 minutes belong to you, Congressman.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Wray, how many counter snipers were present at the rally that day, and which of the counter snipers took the shot that took out the would-be assassin?
I don't have the number of counter snipers. I know it was a
teams.
Secret Service counter sniper who took the shot that eliminated the shooter. And we've conducted a number of interviews, including of him.
2 teams.
So was it one of the 2 that we see in the videos on top of the roof, or was it a different location?
No, that's one team.
I'm afraid I don't have that at my fingertips here.
Okay. You mentioned that the would-be assassin bought a 5-foot ladder. You have a credit card evidence of that, but it looks like on the scene there was a larger ladder that he might have used. Do you know which ladder he used to get to the roof, and do you have possession of that 5-foot ladder and the other ladder, and do you know how
Yeah, I
the
like Massey.
taller ladder got to the scene?
So this whole business about the ladder is something we're drilling into more. we do have possession of the 5-foot ladder that he purchased close in time to his attempted assassination. That we've traced the purchase of that
Bro,
ladder
YouTube
from a
blocks comments in
receipt,
my chats all the
a
time for
bloodied
some reason.
receipt that he had on him.
Yeah, you see me
at the
grooming my
time
beard.
his
It's great.
body was recovered on the
Never a
roof.
tangle in it.
We do not yet know for sure how exactly he got up on the roof. We're looking at, various forensic pieces to try to kind of piece that together. So more to come on that.
Do you know where the 5-foot ladder was found or retrieved? Was it near the roof, or was it still in his vehicle?
Neither.
Where was
I don't
it?
have it in front of me, but I know that it was not. I know that it was not on scene, and I know that it was not in his vehicle.
Then where was it?
But we can circle back to you and get
Okay.
to that.
Is there any evidence at all that he may have been in contact with somebody
I mean, if
else
that's your thing,
before this
Sappy, I'm not
occurred
gonna.
that may have had any prior knowledge or may have helped
not gonna
him
judge.
plan this event?
Well, needless to say, that is a question that we're intensely focused on because that would obviously be incredibly meaningful. So far, underline, so far, we have not found any evidence of any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic.
And you're using geolocation data to see if his cell phone was near another cell phone, I presume?
Right, we're doing lots of different kinds of cellular analysis, geolocation stuff, looking at his accounts. He, from everything we've seen, which is consistent with what we've learned in interviews, a lot of people describe him as a loner. That does kind of fit with what we're seeing in his devices. His list of contacts, for example, is very short, compared to what you would normally see from most people. So it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of interaction between him, face-to-face or digital with a lot of people.
Okay,
Because it was
That doesn't mean there's not any, and that's why we're drilling into. We're trying to talk to anybody who's had any engagement with him whatsoever, digital, in person, classmates, coworkers,
Right.
et cetera.
Appreciate that. And now I want to talk about another possible assassination attempt. And I'll start by showing a video of President Biden. And this is from recently. This is in the last month. If we can play that.
Gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America.
Okay, and he's referring to January 6th. Were there gallows erected to hang Mike Pence, as the president says here?
I'm not aware of any physical gallows. I can't remember whether, from a demonstration perspective, there may not have been some kind of replica or
Yeah.
symbol of something like that.
That's my impression. Can we show?
So that's a
can we
lie?
raise that up so you can see it. It looks like there was some kind of prop that was built. The construction doesn't look like it lends itself to actually hanging somebody. It's more of a prop, I think, as you suggested, that was erected on January 6th. But if the president were correct, that these gallows were erected to hang Mike Pence, that would be a very serious allegation, wouldn't it?
I would take it very seriously, yes.
Has anybody been arrested, or do you have any leads in conjunction with the erection of this?
Man,
gallows?
all my
We've got a
injuries just
picture
fucking
here
hurting
on the
today.
Screen, if you can show it again. It was just up there. There's an individual here who's seen on near these gallows. Has he been arrested? Have you identified this person?
I don't know that I could speak to this specific person.
He's one of
or
yours.
The gallows that are pictured on the image. We have had, I think, 850 people who have pled guilty.
As long as you're being
to
real,
federal
Sabby, I don't give a
crimes,
fuck how y'all
related
acting
to
here.
January 6th, and I think, another 180, I think it is, convicted.
Just no
at
doxing.
trials. I can't be sure.
And some of them merely for going into the Capitol, but here the president suggests that individual intended to hang Vice President Pence.
Sabby?
Which seems like
Not old.
kind of a wild
Getting
claim
there.
myself, given the construction of those gallows. But if we are to take him seriously, or even if we aren't, let me just finish by saying this. If you have no leads, or you're not sure if anybody
What the hell are
who
they
erected
trying to
those
make-
gallows was arrested or is being investigated,
Wow. They really censored that?
were there any confidential human sources involved from the FBI or any other agency
YouTube.
in the erection of that prop, those gallows?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
All right.
No, he
Thank you.
had
I
to
yield
put
back.
that back, Mom.
Gentleman yields back. Lady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Wray. Political violence of any kind is dangerous, unlawful, and totally unacceptable. Just as we all watched and then unequivocally condemned the attempted assassination attempt on our former president, I wish that we could all come together to unequivocally condemn the act of political violence on January 6th, instead of defending props that were used, that were harmful, dangerous props of gallows, attempting to show what people wanted to do to Vice President Pence. Extremists
Didn't you call
attempted
for violence?
to subvert our democracy in the worst assault on the
At
U.S.
one
Capitol
point?
since the War of 1812. Many of us were trapped in the gallery that day. We feared we would not make it out. Insurrectionists were chasing down former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and then Vice President Mike Pence. And I myself have been the direct target of political
probably
violence
someone
when
I
an
don't
armed
follow.
man with a gun showed up at my door, threatened me and my family, and we actually ended up having to move our home.
If you had
So
a
I
gun,
understand the increased tenor of political violence that is racking our country. It has been on the rise, fomented by violent and dehumanizing rhetoric from top public officials, including the former president and members of Congress, sadly.
let me see if I can find
And
her.
bolstered by the proliferation of easily accessible guns, including assault-style weapons. All of this violence is unacceptable, and I wholeheartedly condemn it. I just hope we condemn all of the violence, not just one or two incidents. Mr. Wray, today I want to focus on the role of the FBI and the need for the Bureau to remain politically neutral and independent. The FBI cannot and should not be subject to the whims of any president. The majority apparently doesn't think that the FBI needs to be politically neutral and independent. They want an FBI subordinate to the president, not accountable to the American people. That is one part of a larger plan to undermine our democracy, to
We're not a
remove the
democracy.
checks and balances that have protected us, and ultimately to subvert our freedoms. That agenda, promulgated by the former president, his loyalists, and their MAGA allies, is called Project 2025. It is
okay.
publicly available online.
Because this has something to do with
I
the
encourage
assassination
everyone who's
attempt.
watching this to Google it. It includes plans to undermine every part of our government, including the FBI.
Make sure you click the link that Joe Biden provides and go all the way down to the bottom and tell me what you see.
Trump's Project 2025 agenda says that the director of the FBI must not be independent of politics, but instead must do whatever the president orders. Under Trump's Project 2025, Trump loyalists would undermine the non-political and independent structure of the FBI. Project 2025 openly calls on the next conservative administration to support, quote, a vast expansion of the number of political appointees in every office.
Pay attention to what she said. It calls for. That means it's not going to happen because it's to scare you. But anybody with half a brain and a little bit of knowledge on how to search would know this is bullshit. I'm surprised they didn't put
across
the Lincoln
DOJ,
Foundation in there.
especially the FBI.
Or Lincoln
And
Project.
so, Mr. Wray, given your extensive experience as a law enforcement professional at DOJ across multiple Republican and Democratic administrations, why do you think it's important that the FBI maintain political independence from the president?
I think the FBI is and needs to stay independent, and that means protecting the American people without fear or favor, upholding the Constitution and the rule of law, and it means following the facts wherever they lead, no matter who likes it. And I add that last part because the essence of independence and objectivity is not that an investigation is going to always yield the result you want. Our independence and objectivity can't only be respected when you like the outcome. That's the very essence of objectivity. Sometimes you're going to like the result, sometimes you're not going to like the result. And that applies to everyone, including us. Any number of times we're disappointed and frustrated by the results of our investigations. But the alternative is an erosion of the rule of law, where the only thing that distinguishes one investigation from another is power. And that's what you see in some of authoritarian countries around the world. So I'm not familiar with this particular
No, I didn't ask you to
Project
comment on that.
2025
just
thing.
wanted
I
to
don't know anything about it, but what I can tell you is, from my perspective, the FBI needs to be functioning as independent. Doesn't
Thank
mean
you.
it's not part of the executive branch. It doesn't mean the FBI director doesn't serve at the pleasure of the president, but it does mean that the way we do our work
Has to be objective.
has to be independent.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question about the role of attorneys at the FBI Office of General Counsel. How do we protect that work?
Huh?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The role, what role do the attorneys at the FBI Office of General Counsel play in ensuring that the Bureau respects the constitutional rights of American citizens? How do we protect that work?
So, in my experience, the lawyers in the Office of General Counsel play an incredibly important role in ensuring that our agents have their questions about how to comply with the law and conducting their work answered, and ensuring that we conduct our work in the right way, which means scrupulously adhering to the laws and the rules that apply to us.
I just wanted to say before I yield, Mr. Chairman, that the Project 2025 also eliminates the FBI's Office of General Counsel in-house lawyers who are responsible for that role. I appreciate your indulgence, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin's recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was when you were here December of last year, Mr. Ray, that you said blinking lights were going off in regards to the southern border and what is happening down there. Has the border situation improved in terms of your assessment with the security of Americans since you were last here in December?
Well, I guess a couple things, and I appreciate the question. So first, the blinking lights comment that I made refers more broadly to the threat environment that I'm seeing as FBI director across a wide range of threats. Contributing to that in a variety of ways are the threats that emanate from the border. So it's not a comment just on the border issues, it's the threat environment that we face more broadly, in my experience in law enforcement. I am increasingly concerned that...
That's some info on the guy that decided he wanted to bite some bullets yesterday.
Foreign terrorists could seek to exploit vulnerabilities at our southwest border or at other ports of entry or in other aspects of our immigration system to facilitate an attack here in the United States. I think that is something we have to be concerned about. There's been a lot of focus on numbers of this, numbers of that, and I understand that. But as I think was referenced in an earlier question, it doesn't take very many foreign terrorists to be a real problem. We had 19 hijackers responsible for the 9/11 attacks. And we just, not that long ago, had a case, some of the members of the committee will remember, where we charged an individual for trying to smuggle individuals in to assassinate former President Bush.
Are you concerned that the Border Patrol chief, former Border Patrol chief Rodney Scott, said that he was concerned about very, very minuscule data that they were receiving? So there's all this, we are told that illegal aliens are vetted against databases, but oftentimes they're doing biometrics as they come into this country, but not looking behind it in their home countries. Does that concern you when there's not a review done in the home country?
Well, we certainly need as much help as we can get from the countries of origin of these people. And when I say origin, not just where they come from originally, but countries they've come through. And the biometric enrollment piece is, of course, an important one. We have situations where even if...
Are we doing a thorough enough job of reviewing them, their actions and their lives in their home countries before they came here?
Well, I mean, we need more help from our foreign partners. There's no question about that. And I think that's an important part of it.
How about our domestic partners, like the CIA and others that are supposed to protect us?
So there's been a lot of discussion, of course, over the last several years about the pivot to what's called the hard targets, right? The understandable focus, which I support, of focusing on the threat posed by China and Russia and Iran. But with that comes, if you look at, for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we start to lose sources of information about foreign terrorist threats from overseas, and that is a concern to me.
Yeah, my time's running out. Has Vice President Harris met with you in regards to the border?
Well, I've been in meetings that have included
Simmer down,
the Vice
it's Twitter.
President that have in different ways touched
Alex's
on
page.
border
She
issues.
specifically asked you for a meeting in regards to the threat that is at the border?
You know, I'm not going to get into sort of specific meetings, but I can tell you that I've been in meetings that have included, among other people, the Vice President that touch on border security issues.
Did she ask you questions about what you thought
I bet Bat
needed
Mom
to be
says
done
hella.
in regards to reducing this threat to the American people?
You know, I really can't get into specific conversations.
Is support for President Trump a security concern within the FBI?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Is support for President Trump a security concern amongst your employees?
No.
Is objection to the COVID-19 vaccine a security threat?
Not from my perspective.
Nailed it.
Who improved what is termed the Trump questionnaire within the FBI that was done by SIIS?
What?
Dina Perkins, Jeffrey Ventry were behind it. Who was responsible for that? And did you know that there was a Trump questionnaire out there?
So the document you're asking about is an interview outline that we only recently learned about, and in my view,
How am I a
is completely
hater?
inappropriate. I asked my team to get to the
Don't forget, I have a weakness for, more melanin type skin, and some of them from California. And you learn little things.
bottom of what happened and to ensure that doesn't happen again. And I've learned
It's called
that
observational
it's
skills.
not an FBI form, that its use was isolated, that it was created not by an FBI employee, but by an outside contractor, and that individual is no longer affiliated with the FBI. But we are sending what we have found to the Office of Inspector General, and we'll cooperate, of course, with anything they find.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with this. We keep hearing about these isolated examples, whether it's Richmond Catholics, this instance. When isn't it a pattern? I yield back.
Gentleman goes back, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Director Ray, welcome again to this committee.
I already don't like this
Thank
guy.
you and your agents for good job you're doing to protect Americans.
Oh, wrong guy.
Earlier this week, I was part of the group that went out to visit Butler, Pennsylvania Homeland Security members.
Did you get on the roof?
I agree with my colleagues that have said violence has no part in our democracy. And I trust you will investigate the events surrounding July 13th thoroughly. I'm going to ask you a question. I hope you'll keep it in mind as your investigation proceeds, which is, who's in charge? Who's in charge at a campaign rally, setting it up? Secret Service or a campaign? And I ask this question because when I was there, had a couple of law enforcement individuals alluding to that question as well.
Oh, shit.
He gave me an example. He said, if a Secret Service says you need to set up a line of dump trucks behind the stage to serve, to protect the candidate, and the campaign says that's bad optics, who ends up winning the debate? So my question is, who's in charge? And as you investigate this crime scene, hope you ask the locally elected officials. I spoke to a county supervisor.
He's trying to push this on Trump.
Local police and sheriff. They all had information they wanted us to know, to relay. We just didn't have the opportunity to sit down and talk to them.
Receipts.
There was a lot of concern that they weren't given enough time to prepare for this rally. They thought there were things that could have been done better. And ultimately, what I keep thinking, what I keep coming back to is question, who's in charge at these rallies? I think it's an important one because we have an election right around the corner. Pennsylvania, Butler, these areas, battleground states around the country will continue to be areas where our candidates, both sides, will show up, and the threats will continue to be there. So I hope, Director Ray, that you'll keep that statement in mind as you continue to investigate this crime scene.
Sounds
I
like you're
appreciate
trying
the
to
question. I will tell you that we've conducted well over
force an
400
answer on 'em.
interviews, but we have many more still to conduct. And as is not unusual in an investigation, I'm sure there will be situations where we have to go back to people we've already interviewed with follow-up questions. And our interviews cover a wide range of people. I do think it's important to make sure that the committee and the American people understand the scope of our investigation versus the scope of others. Our investigation is focused on the shooter and his attack. There is, of course, and I understand completely why, there are two separate reviews, one by the DHS Inspector General and the other by this outside independent panel that's been announced, that are focused on the security posture, the adequacy of the security posture at the rally, Secret Service decision-making and actions and things like that. And so I certainly understand why there are all those questions, but those are in scope of those two other reviews, and of course, whatever Congress chooses to do. Our investigation, though, because of our interviews of people who are on the scene, will relate to that in some ways, and we're going to share whatever we learn that's relevant with those other reviews.
Director A, my last minute that I have, I'm going to flip quickly to your good job resources. Earlier this year in the Appropriations Committee, you testified that you were, for 2024, your budget was $500 million below what you needed to sustain your 2023 efforts. A few minutes ago, you talked about foreign terrorists. The last few weeks, I know information has emerged. That information came from FISA information that was able to be collected overseas on these possible terrorist threats. What we have here today is a domestic terrorist, what looks to be a lone wolf. Your statements, there's nothing really there that would have tipped anybody off to this individual.
No?
Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Phone record.
Well, I don't know that I'd go quite that far because we're still investigating a lot related to the shooter. It does appear so far that we're seeing less in his...
My 6 seconds, I would just say, I would ask that you let us know what resources you need to protect the American public and our candidates in our democratic system.
I appreciate the question. I would just say this. We are in, as I've said consistently today and for quite some time now, we are in an elevated threat environment covering a wide range of threats, and the FBI is central to protecting the American people from those threats. And state and local law enforcement, who depend on us every day, rely on us for all sorts of services, databases, forensic support, training. I could go on and on and on. And a lot of those departments, unlike the FBI, have had a hard time recruiting. And so this is not a time to pull back on our funding because we're going to leave our brothers and sisters in state and local.
You're having a hard time recruiting FBI agents, but at the same time, you only select a small amount of people to go through training? That doesn't make sense.
Enforcement twisting in the wind, and then by extension, the American people were all collectively sworn to protect.
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Ray, for being here. When did you last speak with President Biden?
I don't have the exact date, but it's been certainly since the since the shooting.
So you have spoken to the president since the assassination attempt on President Trump's life?
Yes, sir.
And what was the mental state of the president?
God damn it.
We had a perfectly professional conversation.
And are you, do you have any scheduled briefings of the president upcoming?
Not at the moment specifically scheduled, no.
In 2016 and 2015, top FBI officials infamously texted about, quote, their insurance policy to make sure Trump was never elected or inaugurated as president. Have any FBI agents texted, emailed, or expressed disappointment that Trump survived the assassination attempt or otherwise editorialized about the assassination attempt?
I don't know about any agents. There have been at least 2 instances, I think, or 1 instance of an individual who posted something that I consider outrageous and totally inappropriate. And unacceptable. And that individual has been referred to our inspection division, which is the arm, our sort of internal affairs investigatory arm that does the disciplinary process.
Okay. Will you report back to this committee any other incidents?
I'll do my best to share information with the committee.
You testified earlier that the FBI maintains high standards irrespective of so-called diversity efforts. Is it true that in December of 2016, former Director Comey lowered the passing standards for Phase 1, allowing an influx of previously unqualified applicants to continue in the hiring process who normally would have been stopped back in December of 2016?
Yeah, I can't speak to Director Comey's
what were the
changes.
standards?
I can tell you that at least since I've been director, changes that we have made to...
Well, we're standing on a specific question. Were standards changed? Phase 1, this is a specific part of the process. Were they changed in 2016?
Well, I don't recall if they were changed in 2016. Obviously, I started, as your question presupposes, after that. What I can tell you is, since that time, we have made changes to various phases of the process, but none of them, this is important, none of them lowered the standards. In fact, if anything, they actually increased.
Are you familiar with reporting that we have, and we've asked questions to you about this, I'm not sure the result of the questions, that to more, quote, easily accommodate a larger pool of available applicants, FBI special agent hiring standards have been relaxed and requirements measurably lowered. This according to a group of former agents who have testified about this and written a report and submitted it to Congress. In addition, specifically, minority.
So he just lied.
20-year careers. One in particular, a minority who served for more than 20 years, wrote in this report and submitted it to Congress saying that these standards were in fact lowered and that in fact if you were hiring, you were moved off of hiring if you put quality above these kinds of DEI requirements. Do you reject this report? And do you have comments on this report?
I haven't read.
You're aware of the report?
I'm aware of the report. I know that I've read every detail of it, but I can tell you that the claim that we have lowered our standards to be less selective and less competitive is not accurate.
So do you believe these former agents are lying to Congress when they submit a report to Congress stipulating and suggesting otherwise? Or are you saying that they are lying?
I'm saying they're mistaken.
Okay, but they're affirmatively on the record. They're telling us and submitting a report to Congress saying that those facts are directly in contradicting what you're testifying here today. So I just want to be clear so we know we're saying that they are submitting evidence to our record to the contrary that you say is untruthful.
I encounter all the time when I travel around the country and have conversations with our agents, and one of the things I try to do is have meetings with some of the longer serving agents without executive management.
That's okay. My only question is
and my point here's
the implication is it's untruthful. So, but I need to move on. I got 1 minute left. Are you familiar with the case of Paulette Harlow? She's a 75-year-old elderly woman from Massachusetts with a debilitating medical condition. She was prosecuted for violating the FACE Act and sentenced to 2 years in prison. She has to go to Texas in 2 weeks. She was praying at an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. The FBI interrogated and investigated her. Do you think it is appropriate for a 75-year-old woman who is praying at a clinic in D.C. to be put in prison for 2 years for that activity? Just a simple question. Do you think that's appropriate?
I'm not familiar with the specific case.
You're not familiar with that case. It's been significantly in the headlines, but you don't know how to comment on that case, that it's appropriate for a 75-year-old woman to be put in prison for 2 years for praying at a clinic.
Again, since I'm not familiar with the case, I don't want to start weighing in because I don't know all the facts. But what I can tell you is that when it comes to FACE Act enforcement and abortion-related violent extremism, I think one of the things that gets lost, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify it, is that really since the Dobbs decision, actually, more of our abortion-related violent extremism investigations have focused on violence against pro-life facilities, as opposed to the other way around. And we've had a number of investigations. We're using FACE Act resources and our JTTFs.
We're still waiting on responses on letters that we've sent indicating the data to the contrary, that there's been significant amount of efforts in targeting of people who are pro-lifers who go to clinics and that they've been prosecuted, like this case, a 75-year-old woman who is now going to jail in Texas for 2 years because she was praying at a clinic in Washington, D.C. And we've submitted questions on that, and I'd appreciate a response on it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania's record.
Praying is violence, guys.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here and for the work that your team does, as well as for sharing the information that you've been able to today.
Oh, whoa,
Just
who was
a
that?
couple questions
Not you.
about that seem to imply that there was some problem with the FBI's diversity efforts, and certainly the 1950s version of the FBI was singularly Caucasian male agents, et cetera. Is the FBI a better force for having a diverse range of employees and agents?
I think diversity makes us better, but like everything else, it has to be done the right way. I think we can have a more diverse workforce and do it without lowering our standards, and that's, in my view, what we've done.
And you haven't lowered standards at the FBI?
We have not. I repeatedly come across people who are confused about different parts of that, and I appreciate the opportunity to set that straight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're all concerned here as we've seen the rollout of this Project 2025 that purports to try to eliminate any reference to diversity efforts across the entire federal government. So it is sort of a top-of-mind concern as it's threatening to be.
Think about that. Oh, they want to erase history, so you won't know the truth. Why don't we change the names of military bases that have been that way since they were founded? Why don't we just tear down statues everywhere? Let's burn down court buildings. You know what? You're right. Never mind. That shit didn't happen.
Become reality. So what I did want to talk about today is something some of my colleagues have mentioned, which is the normalization of threats and violence against public servants at all levels, whether it's election workers or school officials, elected officials and their families, judges, federal law enforcement agents, and others. To be clear, I think it's very clear that the majority of Americans wholeheartedly condemn any sort of political violence and understand that it's not legitimate discourse and that it has no place in our civic life. But words do matter, and they have consequences, particularly when uttered by people in positions of leadership. So that's why I remain very concerned by the willingness of some members of Congress to repeat disinformation and
like putting a bullseye on Trump,
undermine trust in our public institutions, which serve all Americans. And when elected officials embrace overheated or fact-free rhetoric, it becomes dangerous. I have been heartened, as many national leaders have unequivocally condemned calls to violence, and I would urge all members of this body to do so and continue to do so, regardless of the party affiliation of the perpetrators or the targets of such threats. You and our other national security officials have repeatedly warned us that foreign actors are actively working to spread disinformation, to influence our elections and discredit our public institutions, and we shouldn't be aiding and abetting them. So to live in a country that we aspire to, where our most valued democratic processes like free and fair elections can be carried out unimpeded, and people can run for office, serve their communities, and exercise their right to vote without fear of violence, we've had some concerns about violence around our elections. In 2020, the endorsement and promulgation of falsehoods about the election results by the former president and his campaign led to threats and attacks against election officials and poll workers in Pennsylvania. And those falsehoods also wasted millions of taxpayer dollars on frivolous lawsuits and extraordinary security costs. So as we're again approaching November, we want to ensure that those who implement and defend our elections are neighbors and are not.
So if we call cheap shit from China, Temu, what are we gonna call ourselves when we're Chinese, speaking Chinese? Is Temu gonna be like the standard?
Nonpartisan
Is it
civil
raining?
servants can do that important work free from conspiracy theories and threats. So we know our local law enforcement across Pennsylvania are preparing for some disruption and threats because while Pennsylvania may be a battleground state in the upcoming election, that battle should obviously be a war of words over policy and the vision.
And stop
we're
saying
charting for
battlegrounds.
our country's future, not an actual civil war. So how is the FBI working with state and local law enforcement to prevent and respond to election-related violence, particularly against election workers?
So in a variety of ways, we're partnering with state and local law enforcement. Obviously, the physical security in the first instance, in most of the respects you're talking about, is in the ordinary course, the responsibility of state and local law enforcement. But we play an important role in a number of ways. So we share, threat bulletins, information like that about things to be on the lookout for, things we're seeing. If we ever have specific threat information, then we work to get it to the right people. We have election crime coordinators, which we've had for decades in all 56 field offices who have existing relationship with not just state and local law enforcement, but election officials, especially focus on security and threat-related issues. And then, of course, we're participating in the Election Threats Task Force that DOJ set up, which is focused on threats of violence or actual violence against election workers specifically. And we've had a number of arrests and even some convictions already on that.
Thank you for your input. I yield back.
Generally yields back, Director. It's my intention to go approximately another half an hour. Then we will break for the Prime Minister of Israel's address to the Congress on the floor.
No, fuck that. I don't want to listen to that, Jew.
After that, but we'll keep pushing through for the next half hour.
The war criminal. Why isn't he not in handcuffs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Ray.
Uh-oh.
I think you have a little bit better tone in conversation, so I appreciate it, and answer some questions, so I appreciate it. Hopefully you'll answer also on 2 letters that I sent you over a year ago, one related to Durham report, and the other one related to Russian-infiltrated SBU that collaborated with FBI. So hopefully we'll get these answers, and hopefully we'll start doing authorization. Don't you think doing authorization would help us to get better answers?
How are you doing this fine
Work in authorizing new agency. Don't you agree with that?
Wednesday
We work very hard to try to get information to this committee and to other committees.
But authorizing spending probably would be a good thing for us to do. Don't you agree?
Oh, I'm sorry, authorizing what?
Our spending, not just doing appropriating, but actually doing authorization of spending through this committee.
Yes.
What?
Okay, thank you. We might start doing that. But we can talk about, and a lot of my colleagues on the other side, AR-15 gets a lot of bad rap, like to bring it up, this issue. But really, there are a lot of hunting rifles that probably, maybe even more accurate than a lot of ARs. And don't you agree, we have like millions, right? Don't you agree we have millions of rifles owned by law-abiding Americans? So do you think we should be taking them, millions of rifles from law-abiding Americans? What do you think about that? Would that be something feasible, and really we should be doing that?
Well, again, I'm not going to be addressing anybody's specific legislative proposal. From our perspective, from the FBI's perspective, the concern is any dangerous weapon in the wrong hands.
But all weapons are dangerous.
The wrong person.
But all weapons are dangerous, right?
I'm sorry?
All weapons are dangerous. Knives are dangerous,
Sure.
explosive are dangerous. There are a lot of
weapons are by their very
but are we going to be
definition
confiscating,
car.
Hunting rifles and rifles for millions of Americans? Do you think it's even feasible to do something like that from law-abiding citizens?
It's not something I'm advocating.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we have to go back. That was a catastrophic failure of security. That's what's happened, recently with attempted assassination. Don't you agree with that?
Well, I think former Director Cheadle has already publicly acknowledged that it was, I think her words were, a significant operational failure.
Yeah. Then we had, similar situation, a different, talking about bad optics. Speaker Pelosi at that time didn't want to have bad optics on January 6th, and we didn't have proper security here on January 6th.
Oh,
that
shit.
was a catastrophic failure too. Are we looking at that? Any one conclusion was made from that? Have we made any adjustments? Because I know a lot of people,
I didn't even think of that.
got hurt now just being here. There was a lot of cases bringing up the Department of Justice, and a lot of them were really just law-abiding Americans that really just upset with the government, and they have a reason to do it. So I think we need to think about it before we prosecute, or instead of actually, looking how we can deal with real criminals and how we can have a proper security when we have events with so many people there. So did you have confidential human sources? I think you never answered that question on January 6th in the Capitol. Did you have some?
I'm sorry, what's the
Confidential human sources. Did you have them on January 6th in the Capitol?
Well, again, I'm never going to be getting into when and where we
Okay,
have or have not used confidential human sources. But
are you willing to stand the record that you had no confidential human sources that went into Capitol on January 6th?
as I've said consistently, I'm not going to get into where we have or have not used confidential human sources. I can tell you that if you are asking if the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources or agents, the
not what she
answer is
said.
no.
No, I
And it's
didn't
a
ask you that.
disservice
I
not what
asked
she
you,
said.
so did you investigate if you any confidential human sources? Did you do any investigation and looking at that? So you're not answering if you had any or not. So if you had potentially, did you do anything you needed to make sure to investigate that none of your sources did anything wrong? If they did wrong, they were prosecuted the same way, like you're trying to prosecute a lot of people that really even in
I mean, you got
Supreme
them on
Court ruled
camera, why
recently
not?
that some unconstitutional charges.
Let me just add that there have now been, I think, 180 individuals who've gone to trial, in addition to the 850 who've pled guilty.
For what?
But I think the problem is you put these
To what?
charges, a lot of people would put guilty. But let me say just quickly, because I only have 10 seconds, really. So I hope you will take seriously what you're doing. You know, related to the border security is also a crisis. You know, your vice president was leading on that. Has she initiated meetings with you to lead?
Oh, they're trying to push
weekly or
back on that
monthly
border
meeting where
czar
she
thing.
actually get briefings from you as a leading border czar that had that function? Have you had that? Has she initiated any meetings on a regular basis with you?
Whoa.
Again,
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman can respond.
Right. On this issue of confidential human sources, number one, I will say there is a DOJ OIG review that's underway that I think addresses some of these kinds of topics, I believe, but I won't speak for the Inspector General. Second, as to this suggestion, which I've heard all too many times, that somehow January 6th was orchestrated by FBI agents or sources, I will note that in addition to my prior comments, that there have now been 850-ish
That's not what she said,
individuals who've pled guilty,
stupid.
another 180 who've gone to trial. They've all had access to defense counsel, discovery, all the things the Constitution and the rules provide them. It's been in front of something like 15 different judges, I think dozens of juries, and not one has given credence to
tried
this
for
notion.
insurrection.
In fact, I don't think any of them have even really seriously tried to raise it. So it's not just my word for it. Look what's happening in the cases. Thank you.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here, for your testimony today, for the work that you do each and every day, and that your frontline agents across the country do each and every day to protect Americans, to keep our country safe. Also grateful for the work that you're doing in investigating the horrific events of July 13th and the attempted assassination of former President Trump, which everyone must and has condemned. I would first just ask, do you believe that the FBI has the adequate resources to ultimately ensure that your agency gets to the bottom of it and fully investigates this terrible crime?
Well, we are devoting massive amounts of resources to this specific investigation. We have easily several hundred FBI agents, analysts, and professional staff working on it. It involves over half of the FBI's 56 field offices, almost every headquarters division. We even have some of our overseas offices working on it. You might say, well, why is that? Well, because some of the companies that involve accounts or purchases or communications or what have you that the shooter used are foreign companies, so we have to get evidence from overseas from those companies. I've talked about our lab a little bit earlier today. We've got our Office of Technology Division working on the digital devices. We have our Behavioral Analysis Unit, our BAU, working on helping us build out a profile of the shooter. I could go on and on and on. So it's all hands on deck on this case, as I think is appropriate. Now, when you ask about our resources, I've been public about the fact that the fiscal year 24 budget put us $500 million below where we needed to be to sustain current operations. And on FY25, the current House mark would put us significantly further back behind that and would result in significant risks across every program. And our
Hold on. Pretty sure that had to have a bipartisan vote in one way or another in order to get that budget up or down. Maybe the Democrats should remember that.
support to state and local law enforcement. We arrested something like 50 violent criminals per day, every day, last year. The current mark would mean more violent criminals on the street, more neighborhoods at risk. We have about a 1,300% increase in our investigations related to China and its targeting of us. And I can assure you, China's not cutting its budget. This would mean more threats.
Yeah, we're still
from
giving
China.
them money that we owe.
We have something like 300 to 400 investigations just into cartel leadership. And about hardly a week goes by when some FBI field office isn't seizing enough fentanyl to wipe out an entire state. Those cuts means more fentanyl on the street, more people dying. So the people who suffer the most are state and local law enforcement and the American people we're sworn to protect. And so
let me
look
just
forward
say,
to working with Congress, but we really need to be smart about what we're doing, and I think that would be a step in the wrong direction given the threat environment that we face.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Director Wray, and of course we've talked about this during previous hearings in which you've testified, and to be clear that I think the budget that House Republicans have proposed, which is about a $325 million cut to the FBI, would do precisely what you've described and have deleterious impacts for public safety.
How about we take this away from the money we gave Ukraine then?
We're certainly working to prevent those cuts from taking place. You've talked at great length about the events of July 13. There's justifiably a lot of public interest in the investigation, which we understand is ongoing. Wonder if you might, if there's anything that you'd like to disclose or provide to the committee or to the public that perhaps has not yet been gleaned during the course of this hearing, and just give you an opportunity, because there's a lot of folks related to the investigation. Yeah.
One thing I can give an update on, which is pretty fresh here, we had some conversations with some of the members about the access to the roof and the ladder and so forth.
Yeah.
And our evidence response teams and their forensic collection, we now believe that the subject climbed onto the roof using some mechanical equipment on the ground and vertical piping on the side of the AGR building. In other words, we do not believe he used a ladder to get up there.
One question, if the chairman might indulge me with just a few extra seconds. There's an article recently regarding several former Trump administration national security officials who had received a duty to warn briefing from the FBI regarding the potential threat from Iran. And I think there is this article made clear deep concern that these individuals have, justifiably so, about the threat level.
Article written by who?
The events of the last several months, and the need for there to be an increased security posture and security personnel for former officials who may very well still be at risk. And I don't know if you're familiar with that article. I'm trying not to use names here, but I think would perhaps follow up with your agency and with the Department of Justice more broadly to ensure that any individuals who are potentially facing a threat from Iran or another hostile actor in a foreign nation have the resources they need to have the security available to them.
So again, without reference to any specific individual,
don't forget,
be very clear about this.
I've
tried to be vocal.
Iran have billions of dollars back.
Get noticed as much, which is that in my view, the Iranian government has been extremely aggressive and brazen. We have seen in the last few years an attempt, I'm speaking just from public information now, an attempt to assassinate a former U.S. National Security Advisor on U.S. soil. We have seen an attempt first to kidnap and then to try to murder an American dissident/journalist who was a critic of the Iranian regime, right smack in the middle of New York City. We have seen a cyber attack against a children's hospital in New England that ties back to Iran. We have seen,
actually, it's the other way around,
Bad Mom. Before, as Director Ratcliffe and I announced, an effort by the Iranians to target.
You've been getting better at it, because now I don't have to remind you anymore.
And that's all before you even get to the fact that the Iranian government is the leading state sponsor of terrorism. So if that's not enough to convince people that Iran is a threat, I don't know what is.
But Director, was there a distinction between what the gentleman from Colorado raised and what you just said, this general concern in these specific incidents you talk about, and a direct specific threat on President Trump that's distinct from what you've been describing as this general concern with Iran?
Well, again, I can't get into specific pieces of class.
And if
No,
so, when?
I know.
If it was
Yeah.
a distinct
See?
threat on President Trump.
You
when
did learn something. You did. That's what I used to tell you.
When did that take place?
Yeah, all I can tell you, certainly in this kind of setting, is targeting of U.S. officials for the Soleimani strike is something that is a reality that the Iranian government has at times called for very publicly. And whenever there is reporting, let me try to answer your question this way. Whenever there is reporting about any of those protectees, we share the information in a variety of ways, working with the intelligence community, working with whoever is the protective service with responsibility for that individual, and we do it in a timely way using the duty to warn process that was just referred to. And to my knowledge, everything along those lines that's relevant was shared in a timely way with the relevant people.
Thank you.
Get your
Gentleman
cleaning
from
up the
Wisconsin.
front lawn without me even telling
Director
them.
Ray, thanks for being here.
Good kid.
Where were you when you heard that President Trump was shot, and then what were like your immediate actions, response to that as director?
I was about to have dinner with family.
I know, right, Pat Mom?
And I was horrified and angry.
I'm just thinking, the reason I asked the question is because I'm still trying to figure out kind of the lanes, what the FBI would respond to and what the Secret Service has the responsibility to respond to. Can you just kind of cover that again?
Sure. So the FBI is not responsible for, has never really been part of our mandate or mission for the physical security of venues, of specific protectees or anything like that. That's, if it's somebody within Secret Service's scope, that's their mandate and mission. We are a law enforcement and intelligence agency, and so if you
Director
think about
Ray?
it this way, we're the federal
That makes them look even worse.
Bureau of Investigation. We're not the Federal Bureau of Security. You might say, well, what's the difference? Well, there is a difference. We investigate crimes. We investigate threats to national security, but we don't, questions about security posture, the adequacy of resources and assets that were deployed to protect a specific individual, whether there's enough security, and certainly the staffing of that security is not something the FBI, again, we're 116 years old, has historically done.
So at this point, have you been able to go through the shooter's home and kind of document kind of what you found as far as evidence goes?
What's up, Matt?
We have been able to search the shooter's home. So again, just sort of tying your first question to your second question now, our role is to conduct an investigation of the shooter and the attack. And so we're going to conduct a painstaking, intense investigation of that. We have, among other scenes that we've processed using evidence response teams, in addition to the rally scene itself, of course, we have been through the shooter's home, his bedroom, other parts of the house, et cetera.
Have you been able to establish that he did go to a range and either zero that weapon in or, at least target shoot that weapon prior to the assassination attempt?
So we do assess that he went to a shooting range the day before, not the only time he went to a shooting range. He was a fairly, avid might be a little strong, but a fairly avid
I'm kind of an avid shooter.
And so he went to, belonged to different sort of clubs and went to certain ranges and that kind of thing. We do believe, based on what we've seen so far, that he went to a shooting range the day before and that he shot an AR-style rifle at that range the day before. I'm not sure.
You should have
for
video.
sure that it's the weapon that he used, but I think we assessed that it probably is.
I know my
Have you been
shooting
able
range
to,
has video.
Interview his parents.
Yes, we have.
And was there anything that was gained from that interview that would lead you to believe that they certainly were aware of what was going on?
I guess I want to be careful about talking about specific people's interviews, but I would say that his parents were cooperative with us. And as I've said before, and hopefully this gets at your question, we have not identified any accomplices, co-conspirators, or
Second
anything
sniper.
along those lines.
So it's the FBI's position right now that he still acted independently.
Again, we're still, I know it seems like a lifetime since July 13th, but we're still early stages, but we have not seen anything
Early
so
stages.
far that would suggest to us that he acted with others.
How does the FBI view not just a Trump rally, but political rallies versus other types of events, you know, from a security perspective, compared to a college football game or any mass, you know, large crowd type gathering? Because I think one of the things that's most difficult to really to swallow at this point is that the idea that these Trump rallies have been happening for years, and that there could be such a lax approach to the physical security of those fairgrounds that day. And I'm wondering, you know, where does this fall? And then on top of that, that there were other presidential candidates out there that didn't have full Secret Service protection. RFK Jr. has been the most vocal.
Been asking
about it.
for over a year.
Comment on the facilities as well as providing security for presidential candidates.
Well, again, I want to be a little bit careful to stay in my lane because, again, security posture and the adequacy of the security posture is really the core expertise and
Oh no, they've
responsibility
shown
of agencies like
videos of his range, and people running through courses. So there's camera.
Secret Service. But certainly it is, I think, fair to say that outdoor events, whether they're political rallies or, as you say, you know, a college football game in an open stadium, a concert, these are places that are often, you know, particularly challenging to secure adequately because the range of threats that can face them are higher. In addition to that, has been discussed a little bit here already in today's hearing, just threats to public officials, including politicians, is an increasingly pervasive part of today's landscape. And so that adds to the challenge. So you're talking about the combination of individuals who are increasingly targeted for violence, combined with venues that are softer and harder to secure targets, I guess is the way I would answer. But again, those kinds of questions, the adequacy of the security posture, all the resources that were or were not devoted, all that stuff, is my understanding would be very much in scope for the DHS Inspector General investigation and this outside independent panel that's been appointed.
I yield back. Gentleman yields back. Director, I think we're going to be able to get two more members' times of question, then we have to get to the floor for the.
He is. It seems like it.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you so much, Director Ray, for your transparency and your testimony today. First, I want to say my friend, my mentor, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, was known by many as the voice of reason here in Congress, and she was my friend before I even came to Congress. And in my freshman year, she kind of took me under her wing and she kind of showed me the ropes. And she was a force to be reckoned with. And I can say that she will never, ever be replaced. And she was
Actually,
a
she's
trailblazer,
gonna be
and I know that
replaced.
she will
She has to.
sorely be missed here in Congress. Director Ray, I only have one question for you today, but before we get to that point, I'd just like to reiterate today that political violence is never acceptable. Regardless of how different our political values and views are, attempted assassinations are a stain to the very democratic ideals of this nation.
Not democratic.
We have endured riots on Capitol Hill on January 6th, where a literal noose was erected on Capitol grounds.
No, I only
intended for
watched
then
her hearing.
Vice President Pence and Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi. Political violence against election workers, that has been expressed today. An attack on Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Okay.
Threats against the FBI agents, as you have expressed, and prosecutors, and threats to the staff who serve the public every single day.
Steve Scalise literally got shot.
Congressman Connolly's staff was targeted and attacked last year. And now we have the attempted assassination of a former president of the United States.
Don't worry about
All of
Scalise.
this within just the last 3 years. This violence simply needs to end. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump was, by the grace of God, a failure. The weapon the 20-year-old man was able to obtain, an AR-15, generally
Legally.
has a shooting range up to 600 yards.
A little
and
more
shot
than that,
Mr.
up to
Trump
1,200.
from almost 150 yards away. This weapon has the ability to kill multiple people in seconds. And sadly, Corey Compouture lost his life because of this man and because of this gun. Mr.
Rifle.
Compouture's family will never be the same. Trust me, I understand that more than anyone else in this room. Is the near loss of a former president enough for this Congress to finally take action? Because there are 206 of us that are already standing in the wings, ready to take immediate action to ban assault weapons.
Think about this. What if one of those other people on the field, knowing they couldn't bring a gun because it's a Trump rally, what if they had a gun to be able to stop that guy as soon as they put eyes on him? What if? Think about that. Of course you don't. I bet you have guns at your home. I bet you have security with guns. And I guarantee you like your cops to have ARs. But they're not ARs, they're M4s. Those are fully automatic. Those are weapons of war. Why don't you go after those?
Today. We need only 12 more of our colleagues to join us in courage and move the legislation to save lives of so many of the
Don't say
people
it.
that we are elected to serve by removing assault weapons from the hands of people who simply should not
See,
have
here's the
them in
thing.
their possession.
That's how you know it's democracy. Because they only want the senators to vote the way they want to go. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. That's not. They don't even ask their constituents. They're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And they're like, oh, yeah, oh, I love you, blah. Not even paying attention to the substance of her comments.
We are crippling our democracy, and we are ripping apart our fellow Americans until we do. I ask today, because it is clearly it wasn't enough to take action when the lethality of assault weapons, we lost 26 and 7-year-olds and 6 teachers in 2012, when I also lost my son to gun violence.
Yeah, what was he doing?
14 teenagers and 3 more teachers in 2018, nor was it enough when we lost 19 more children and 2 more teachers in 2022. Well, is it enough now? Now that a former president, the very president of many of
I've said this before and I'll say it again. You take away guns, you create soft targets. Because you know criminals, these guys that are going to do mass shootings, they're never going to go after a hard target except for, assassins. But apparently, there's no way that should have happened because there's failures all over the place. It's almost like it was supposed to happen, but they failed.
you in this room are hoping will be reelected almost lost his life because this Congress has failed to reinstate an assault weapons ban.
That was a pistol.
A ban that, by the way, Republicans joined with Democrats the past 30 years ago. Well, fine. If y'all don't like assault weapons ban, we can bring another bill that I have introduced to a vote, the Go Safe Act. This bill focuses on the components of the semi-automatic firearms and regulates their infrastructure, sale, and transfer.
Do you know a
This, again,
pistol
is not the time
semi-automatic,
for
right?
thoughts and prayers. This is a time
I
for
bet you
action.
don't.
Director Wray, just one question I have for you.
But I will tell you, if they decide to take away semi-automatics, I got revolvers. I got some old Henrys.
Would you rather have your officers protected or protect someone against an assault weapon being shot from 147 yards away or a standard pistol with no accessories attached?
I can hit a target with a pistol.
Again, I'm going to refrain from appearing to comment on specific legislative proposals, but I can tell you that we have certainly concerned about the danger to law enforcement from any kind of high-powered weapon in the wrong hands. And it hits close to home for us because just not that long ago, two great agents, Laura Schwarzenberger and Dan Alphen, down in Miami, executing a search in a crimes against children case, were shot and killed by a subject with an automatic weapon. So again, dangerous weapons in the wrong.
You hear what he said, right? He didn't say semi-automatic. So what are we even talking about now? He said automatic weapon. Those are illegal in the United States, unless you have a tax stamp or a FFL stamp.
Wrong hands is something that, of course, from a law enforcement perspective concerns us, but I'm not going to wade into the legislative process.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'd rather give our agents a fighting chance, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Oregon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Ray, for being here today. So we spend $3 billion a year, excuse me, on the Secret Service, $3 billion. And it would seem that we could and should have had a better job done a few weeks ago on the 13th than what we saw. Will you have anything to say about correcting what are the obvious deficiencies in what the Secret Service did?
Well, for the most part, the deficiencies or adequacy or inadequacy of Secret Service's performance, decision-making, resources, all that stuff is in the purview of those two other investigations. That is the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been announced. Having said that, our investigation, which, as I've testified now, involves several hundred FBI employees and every asset we can bring to bear, of the shooter, again, our investigations of the shooter and his attack, of course, involves interviewing law enforcement, including lots and lots and lots of Secret Service people. So we'll share all that with those reviews so that they can answer those questions.
The reason I'm asking this is because this isn't the first time the Secret Service has been before Congress. There was a 435-page report issued in 2015 by Congress saying, fix yourself. They didn't. In fact, there was a follow-up in 2019 where they had only done a few of the, I think it was 18 or 19 different specific things they were supposed to do. They'd done some, but certainly not all. There was another follow-up in 2022, and again, the Secret Service had not done what Congress had asked. I guess my question to you, Mr. Director, is what should Congress do? A 435-page report 9 years ago, and still the Secret Service didn't do what it was told to do then. Can you help, Director Ray? Because this type of performance is not acceptable.
Well, I think even former Director Cheadle has acknowledged that this was a significant operational failure. If there are ways for the FBI to be helpful beyond what we're already doing in terms of our investigation, we stand ready to try to be helpful. I do want to say, as somebody who's been in law enforcement for most of my career, I've worked with some just phenomenal Secret Service agents. Going all the way back to my time as a line prosecutor, and they have an incredibly hard job, and I have a lot of affection and respect for the men and women of the Secret Service.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you're right. But the trouble is, when Congress says you need to do these 19 things and they don't, something needs to change. Now, the director has resigned, but you're going to be in a position, because your agency is doing such a careful review, to say a lot about what should have been done. I guess the real issue is much more of what the higher-ups in that agency are or are not doing. Perhaps that's on us.
And we will share with those reviews anything that we come across that could be helpful or relevant to them for those questions.
Yeah, let me quickly go to some details on the actual events. It appeared to a lot of us, as the Secret Service was taking former President Trump from the stage, that he was clearly still in view of everybody. And had there been another shooter, I didn't see him being protected. Are you going to raise that issue?
But that was on Secret Service.
I think that's really more in scope of these two other reviews,
Let me go
both of them.
Okay, that's fine. Let me go to the shooter as he was on top of the roof. Apparently another officer from another police division saw him and quickly ducked down because the shooter aimed a gun at him. And then the shooter apparently, was he prone at the time he took the shot toward the president?
So my understanding is that the local officer that we're talking about, with the assistance of another local officer, was able to kind of get up and see onto the roof where he observed the shooter, I believe, in a prone shooting position. The shooter then turned and faced him, the local officer, with the weapon.
From the prone position.
That's my understanding.
And then he went back to the prone position.
And this is all seconds before the shooter took his.
But at that entire time, the shooter was in the scope sight of the counter sniper, correct?
That one I'd have to double check on. I know we've interviewed the counter sniper, but I'm not sure I know the answer.
But the counter sniper didn't take a shot until after the assassin attempted
Yeah, you can see it in the video.
the former president and others. He got off 8 shots before the counter sniper shot the shooter. What's with that protocol?
2 shots were fired by counter sniper.
Well, I really want to be careful not to be, given the scope of our investigation, somehow second guessing the very difficult act and decision it takes for a counter sniper to kill another human being in that situation. It's all happening in seconds. So
8 shots.
Yeah.
And that was after he'd been seen for 20 minutes. I yield back. Thank you.
Director, that's an important question, though, because you've talked to the counter sniper. And that, I mentioned this in our opening statement, that critical 5 minutes from 6:09 to 6:14 and what takes place there is critical. And I think that's what the gentleman was getting at. And we were hopeful that you could tell us something about your interview with the counter sniper.
yeah, I guess I want to distinguish a couple things. There is some individual, not law enforcement, I believe, who spotted the shooter on the roof a few minutes before. But I think law enforcement spotting him with the weapon on the roof is seconds before the shot.
Okay,
So,
that's important.
yeah,
'cause
so I think there's two different things
I think
going
what you're
on
saying
there.
is it wasn't maybe that if the bad guy shoots at 6:11, then you're saying this encounter with local law enforcement that Mr. Bentz was just getting into happened just seconds before that and maybe not 2 minutes before that?
That's my understanding. That, in other words, that there's different things here. There's an individual, at least one individual I can think of, not law enforcement, member of the public, who observed him on the roof.
Has anybody asked for the body cam of the cop that supposedly looked up and saw the shooter? And the cop that was supposedly holding him up? From what story they said? Their body cam should be able to prove that, at least part of it, right? What's up, Laura? Why don't we have that body cam footage? It's kind of weird. I mean, unless it's already out and I didn't see it. But wouldn't that be an important piece of body cam to put out?
Clear whether or not the individual saw a weapon or not, but saw him in a way that was concerning. That is some number of, not many, but like just a handful of minutes. I think separate from that, as far as law enforcement goes, in terms of a weapon, this local officer that we just talked about observed the individual, again, literally just seconds before the shooter took his shots. Separate and apart from all of that, roughly, I think, maybe a little less than or around an hour before the shooting, there were local law enforcement officers who observed the shooter, not up on the roof, not with a weapon, but with I believe, a rangefinder, kind of like you would use if you were playing golf or something, in a way that was odd and suspicious. So that started happening with local law enforcement beforehand. But in terms of shooter, meaning with the weapon, law enforcement, my understanding is that the
You know
first
what,
time
Matt? That one too.
was this local officer climbing up on the roof seconds before
Again, we want that timeline. I think the committee wants that timeline and communications that were taking place in that short period of time.
Again, as I've said with everything else, I really want to be careful. I'm leaning in, trying to share as much as I can here. Facts are evolving, things may change, but we are working on a timeline, among other things.
The committee will stand in recess until after the Prime Minister's remarks conclude.
Oh, well, fuck. Walk away for 2 seconds. Oh, for a guy who actually talked a lot, he gave out minimal information, but he's also letting out he blatantly has been lying and got caught lying again. And it's funny how both sides were trying to get him in a gotcha questions. And it was terrible. You can just tell, especially the Democratic side. Assault weapons were not used in this shooting. At least not by that kid. Unless, hear me out, unless that kid was given that rifle by the guy he was communicating that had contacts with the FBI. That they met quite a few times. That's why they were asking about the geolocator. Every question they had a meaning. Almost like I've been slowly releasing the same things, only for them to be, oh, well, we can't talk about that. Blah, 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 blah. But in reality, they don't want to. Because it gives the answers, or at least a general direction to go to. But it's whatever they want to do. It's all a game. It's all a game. We're the pawns. Our vote doesn't matter because we're in a democracy, and that showed. Well, we already have 200 and blah 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 senator or congresswomen men that are willing to vote to ban weapons. So go to your districts and I don't know, ask. Have a town hall. I don't see those. Maybe every once in a while. But shouldn't these senators, when they take their month-long vacations like they're about to take, they get and talk to the people, have town halls, figure out what they need to help make their job better. It's not like they have to leave their house or their the hometown wherever they're doing their work and stuff. Hold it there. Why not? People got to go to there to vote at voting booths. Why not? I'm just saying. That would truly be a constitutional republic and not a democracy, but it doesn't matter because how do they say it? The votes don't count and the points don't matter. No? You guys remember that? Remember that. Whose line is it anyway? Fuck you. All right, that's it. Not telling you how to think. Keep forgetting this mic is really weird. I have to be right in front of it for to hear something because it's that kind of mic, and I don't really feel like turning the other side. Anyway, not telling you how to think. I'm just telling you to think. Maybe my views are a little. Oh, you know what? Hold on. So every once in a while, like when they put out these political party campaign test things, right? Hear me out. Once I move it. Such a bunch of questions that you just randomly take, right? And it chooses, well, not really chooses, but your answers is like, check this out. This is who you might associate with. So I was like, all right. So obviously, for presidential candidate, I put Vivek Ramaswamy, but obviously he's not there. But they say, this guy, I don't know who the fuck Russell Cohen is. I know another Cohen, but it's not him. But if that dude's not right, look, Donald Trump. And then you got JFK down here. RFK, I'm sorry. Somehow Joe Exotic's on there. I don't get that one. But look, very last on the list. Very last on the presidential list. Now let's go look at the vice president. Look who's number one. Who's last? Elise Stefanik. Wow. AOC's above Stefanik. Damn. Parties. This is my favorite part because it never changes. Constitutional. You know what I say when a constitutional republic? That's why. But wait, there's more. Second on the list, libertarian. Definitely something I'll say I agree with. Number 3, Republicans. But wait, look at number 4, veterans. Right? Hold on. Check this out. Let's go to very, very last. Oh, not very last, third to last. What is that? What is that? Ouch. Ooh. And now let's go to ideology. This is the fun stuff. Once it picks up, it's going to take forever. Very, very, very bottom. Let's see what's down here. Oh, here we go. So my ideologies. I took this test yesterday. I can put the link if you guys want to take it yourself. Just let me know. But paleoconservatism, which if you guys want to know, I'll read it for you. 'Cause I had to look it up, and it seems pretty ideal. Pretty on point. Paleoconservatism is a political ideology that emphasizes tradition, limited government, civil society, anti-colonialism, and anti-federalism. The term paleoconservatism is derived from the Greek word paleo, which means ancient or old, damn, and is used to distinguish his political philosophy, with neoconservatism a more modern form of conservative ideology. Paleoconservatism originated in the United States in the 20th century amongst conservatives who felt the mainstream conservative movement had strayed too far from the original principles. They believe that the conservative movement has become too accommodating to liberal ideas, particularly in the area of social policy and foreign interventionism. Paleoconservatism sought to return to what they saw as the true conservative principles of limited government, traditional social values, and non interventionist foreign policy. The roots of paleoconservatism can be traced back to the old right, a political movement that opposes the New Deal policies of FDR in the 1930s and 1940s. Old rights was characterized by its opposition to big government, high taxes, labor unions, foreign intervention. In the 1950s and 1960s, the conservative movement began to split, with some conservatives supporting a more interventional foreign policy and the others advocating for a return to the principles of the old right. In 1980s and 1990, the term paleoconservative became to be used to describe conservatives who oppose the neoconservative influence within the Republican Party. Paleoconservatives criticized the neoconservatives for their support of an interventionist foreign policy and their willingness to compromise on social issues. They also opposed influence of big business and globalism on the conservative movement. Paleoconservatism has a significant influence on American politics, particularly within Republican Party. It has been associated with politicians such as Pat Buchanan, who ran for president as a Republican in 92 and 96 on the platform of free trade, immigration, and foreign intervention. Despite its influences, paleoconservatism remains a minority movement within the broader conservative movement. Wow. Crazy, right? It's a lot of reading, and I got cotton mouth, so that didn't even make it any worse. But let me go pull up the. Here we go. So if you guys have any free time and you want to see, fuck. Only for Batmom. ¿Dónde está el biblioteca? Whoa, that's not what that. Somehow that changed languages. I don't get it. But that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I was going to go over that later because I was going to see me take the test right in front of you and see if I came up with the same values. Every year I've taken that test always leads to the same thing. So I know my values have never changed, but it's okay. Because, when you got old world values, makes you think what I mean by old world. Hmm? Hmm? Think about it. Just think about it. Thank y'all. See y'all next time. When y'all take that test, just let me know. Put your results in the comments if you take it. You don't have to. You don't have to put your results because if you come up as a socialist, I probably won't knock you, but I'll be like, are you